All right, I believe we are live. I'm just going to double check everyone, make sure we're up on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Telegram, and Rumble, and then we'll start. All right, folks, I am going to start the live. Today, we're going to be talking about migrant parole program paused amid fraud concerns and the Google antitrust ruling and more. With special guest Robin Austin, we're also going to be diving into the Zach Voorhees drops, drops that he leaked in 2019, and how it proves many different aspects of the machine learning fairness algorithm, the Google blacklist. And as many may have seen a couple of weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, when Google was censoring the search parameters assassination attempt on Trump. They were not coming up in the auto search. We're gonna be going into the actual documents and showing you how that actually works from a programmatic aspect and angle. Being that I'm a software engineer myself, so I can probably explain it to everybody pretty well. Anywho, so let's. With that being said, let me read our disclaimer, and we will get started. It's been a minute. Good to be back in the game. The views expressed on this show are expressly the views of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views, beliefs, or opinions of News4us.World, its hosts, broadcasters, or affiliates. Remember, folks, always use your own discernment when viewing. We encourage our viewers to think for themselves. All right, everyone, we're here, we're live, and let us begin. So let me bring up. Well, first, let me introduce our guest, Robin Austin. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you're working on, and as far as your upcoming book and how we kind of got together to start collaborating as a team. Unmute yourself.
All right, Stephen, thank you. My name is Robin Austin, and I work with a radio show that has been on Blog Talk Radio, and we are getting ready to go into more venues with that. And it deals with the conditions in our probate courts, family courts, and divorce courts. And those conditions have been largely co-opted by criminal organizations that operate under the color of law. We've got a book coming out called The Probate Trap: Invisible, No Liberty, Injustice for All. And this book will open the door to understanding what it is that's really being done to people under the color of law. In other words, the pretense of something lawful, when in fact it is criminal according to the Constitution of the United States. They're violating people's rights. They're taking people's property without compensation. They're locking people away from their families, and they're taking their liberty, often taking their life. And this book is an expose. Together with Stephen, we've been working on a website, which will be at theprobatetrap.org. And you're welcome to look at that, although it's just brand new and there's not very much there yet. We're working on that. But I got together with Stephen because of our mutual interest in justice for people who have been abused by the powers that be, whether that be, in our case, the courts, whether it be the media that's putting forth a false narrative, whether it be the corporate sponsorship that controls the media and means that we do not get the truth about what is going on in the world of medicine, politics, virtually anything these days. We are all exposed to a controlled, curated kind of media that is designed to keep us in the dark and keep us ignorant instead of enlighten us and teach us about the realities of our world as it once was. There's no such thing anymore in any of the major media as actual, real, honest to God news, because it's all controlled. And this is something that we've both realized independently. And when we started to see and meet victims of these crimes that are being perpetrated under color of law, that are being perpetrated against the American people and against people worldwide, really, we found in each other kindred spirits. And so we've worked together in both online and offline to address some of these problems. And this is how Stephen and I know each other, and this is what we're both engaged in.
Oh, very, very well, well explained. Thank you very much for that introduction. We really appreciate it, and I know our viewers do as well. So, we got a lot to get to today. Let's begin and start our segment, and we're going to get into it with the latest in the news. As of this is dated. Let's see. Let me make sure everybody can see this article and share my sound. There we go. Just zoom it in a bit so it's a little bit more legible. There we go. Okay. According to FAIR-US.Org, which is FAIR stands for Federation for American Immigration Reform. Now, this is published July 31st, 2024. Internal Homeland Security report proves Biden-Harris-Mayorkas CHNV Parole program loaded with fraud. FAIR take. August 2024. Immigration enforcement advocates have strongly proposed or opposed the illegal parole programs created by the Biden-Harris administration, repeatedly warning lawmakers about the public safety and national security risks. Those concerns have now been confirmed by an internal investigation by U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, which found the agency has been rubber stamping parole applications as quickly as possible without verifying information provided by sponsors or parolees. The new report, obtained exclusively by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, details the alarming results of an internal review USCIS performed of thousands of sponsor applications for the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan parole program to identify patterns, trends, and potential fraud indicators. The new and never disclosed internal report suggests massive fraud in the application process, and specifically fraudulent information used in thousands of forms I-134A. The paperwork a sponsor files with USCIS for each alien seeking parole through the CHNV program, meaning undocumented migrant is what they mean by alien. Folks, not extraterrestrial, mind you, no pun intended. The results are astounding. According to the internal agency review, evidence of fraud includes the use of fake Social Security numbers, including Social Security numbers of deceased individuals, and the use of false phone numbers. Many applications listed the same physical address. In fact, 100 addresses were listed on over 19,000 forms, and many parole program applicants applied from a single property, including a mobile park home, warehouse, and storage unit. In addition, many applications were submitted by the same IP address. If this weren't bad enough, the same exact answers to Form I-134A questions were provided on hundreds of applications. In some instances, the same answer was used by over 10,000 applicants. According to DHS sources, because of the alarming new information, Customs and Border Protection decided to halt entry for those who applied under the program. It is unknown how many of the aliens or undocumented migrants seeking parole through CHNV and described in the report were approved for the benefit, and how the department educated applications of sponsors who fabricated their applications. It also remains unclear if and how DHS is resolving the prevalence of fraud in the program. Below is a summary of the findings of this internal DHS report obtained by FAIR. Form I 134A filing overview. The report summarized the results of a review USCIS performed on the CHNV sponsor application forms, Form I-134A, that were received as of April 17th, 2024, totaling 2,622,076. The applicants, which are submitted electronically, were not assessed by typical adjudicators, but rather are reviewed by personnel who simply deem the application sufficient. According to the report, of the total 2.6 million received, nearly 529,000 applicants were confirmed or approved, and around 118,000 were not confirmed or denied. 2. Reoccurring information in data fields on Form I-134A. IP addresses. The report reveals that 100 IP addresses accounted for 51,133 of the Form I-134A applications submitted. In one example, an IP address located in Tijuana, Mexico was used 1,328 times. The report states that, on average, each IP address associated with these programs submitted 2.2 application forms. Sponsors. Social Security numbers. The internal report found that a total of 100,948 forms had been filed by 3,218 different serial sponsors. It also notes that sponsors often did not provide their income, even though the sponsor is financially required to support the alien or undocumented migrant. Sponsors that did provide their incomes often did not meet the financial threshold to support the number of parolees they intend to sponsor. The report also highlights that applicants use Social Security numbers of deceased individuals and states that 24 of the 1,000 most used sponsor Social Security numbers belong to a deceased individual. Wow. Sponsor and parolee phone number. The review found that the phone number submitted on the I-134A application forms were used, in fact, many times. In fact, the report states that one sponsor phone number was reported on over 2,000 forms submitted by 200 different sponsors. Furthermore, one parolee phone number was reported on 626 different forms and was associated with 238 different parolee last names and 142 different parolee addresses. Sponsor and parolee email addresses. DHS also found that sponsors filled out multiple forms for multiple aliens or undocumented migrants seeking parole. According to the report, the most frequently used sponsor email address was listed on 363 different forms. Further, the most frequently used parolee email address was listed on 1,723 different forms collectively, submitted by 477 different sponsors. Repetitive text field. The department scrutinized answers to questions on the I-134A form to determine how often the answers reoccurred verbatim and found that the exact same responses were used over and over. In one instance, the same answer was used 4,978 times, while a slightly different variation of the answer, using she versus he, was used 2,837 times. And another slightly different variation of the answer using the was used another 2,557 times. Suspicious data changes. According to the internal report, sponsors used USCIS, the own online service, to log into their accounts and change their names or the names of prospective parolees. Oh, wow. The names of prospective parolees. The report states that in some instances, the account holder changes were concerning. Okay. 4, using fictitious information to support the form. The report discusses at length that data provided by sponsors and parolees on the application form I-134A were fictitious. The data reviewed included zip codes, phone numbers, A files, and social security numbers. First, DHS examined various databases, including the U.S. Postal Service, and found that 465 zip codes did not exist. The report states in total there were 2,839 forms with non-existent physical zip codes. A cursory review found obvious application errors as well as potential fraud and eligibility concerns that warrant closer examination. If sponsors were submitting real phone numbers, the report found that in total sponsors submitted 1,908 applications using 3,264 phone numbers, including mobile phone numbers and other daytime phone numbers that appeared fictitious, not listed in official database. Some phone numbers were not standardized U.S. phone numbers. Some were unique and some were 11 digits long and used more than once. Third, the report discusses how the internal review found that A, file numbers, a unique number assigned to each undocumented migrants' immigration file used in many applications were false. DHS found that a total of 1,085 A numbers submitted in applications were never used by USCIS. Those 1,085 A numbers appear on 4,590 forms. According to the report, one fake A file number was used on 353 different forms. Fourth, the report highlights the use of fraudulent social security numbers. The report shows that aliens often use similar social security numbers, such as 111111111 or 123456789, or all sixes. That's uh, 9 6s in a row. Proving that fraudulent data was being brazenly provided to the government. Other concerning trends and patterns. 5. First, the government report discusses the high occurrence of underage or gender-based filings and says that a select few IP addresses had a high female to male parolee ratio. In other words, many forms were being filled out by and by the same internet user, and many of those females were under the age of 18. Oh, wow. Second, and more shockingly, the report discusses how physical addresses were used over and over. It states that there were 100 addresses used between 124 and 739 times on unique forms, and these 100 addresses were associated with 19,062 forms. The properties associated with the addresses on the forms include mobile home parks, warehouses, storage units, apartment complexes, and commercial properties. The review found that 739 forms used the address from a single mobile home park. Another 596 were attributable to a single warehouse, and 501 had an address to store a storage unit. And then we're going to go through a little background, and then there's a chart. And then we'll go to the next article, which is from the 2nd of August. We got a few articles for each subject matter, folks, so just bear with us. I'm going to put it all together, and then we're going to talk about it. In October of 2022, the Department of Homeland Security announced the implementation of a categorical parole program to allow otherwise inadmissible undocumented migrants or aliens and their immediate family members from Venezuela to apply for immigration parole and be released into the United States. This program was expanded in January 2023 to include Cubans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans. According to DHS, qualified aliens or undocumented migrants who are outside the United States and lack U.S. entry documents may be considered for advanced authorization to travel to the United States. Aliens or undocumented migrants may qualify if they have a supporter in the United States who agrees to provide them with financial support for the duration of their parole process in the United States. To apply, the U.S.-based supporter would apply to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, otherwise known as USCIS, and file a Form I-134A online request to be a supporter and declaration of financial support for each undocumented migrant or alien that they seek to support, including minor children. DHS says that they will review the supporter information provided in the Form I-134A to ensure that they are able to financially support the beneficiaries they are agreeing to support. The chart below includes all confirmed CHNV beneficiaries between October 22nd and March 2024, or between October of 2022 and March 2024, totaling 494,799 individuals. And here's a chart with the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan parole beneficiaries, number of cases confirmed from fiscal year 2023 through to fiscal year 2024 through March. And so orange is Haitian. Let me open this up in a new tab here. Let me open this up so we can see a little bit better. There we go. So Cuban is in light blue or bluish. Haitian is in orange. Nicaraguan is in red, and Venezuelan in green. So these are the number of people that went through this program during that time frame, according to this chart. So you got a scale of 0 to 45,000, basically here. And you have all the numbers marked in here. So yeah, it's wow. That's crazy. And then okay, so we have I don't know how long is this clip. I don't know. All right, let's play this little clip here because I think it's relevant because it's from this article. And then we're going to go into the next one, which is from August 2nd. We'll read that. It's a shorter one, and then we're going to get into the actual article from yesterday. All right, so
Biden administration pausing a program that allowed hundreds of thousands of migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to legally enter the United States. The hold happening over concerns of significant fraud among people sponsoring the migrants. Let's bring in Daniel Stein, president for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, whose organization broke the news that this report had been done and that the pause had been initiated. So the report, I have to say, Daniel, is shocking, but I assume to you it's probably not surprising.
Well, this is only the tip of the iceberg. And here at the Federation for American Immigration Reform, we obviously want to be a generous people, but not at the expense of public safety and national security. When the Biden-Harris administration initiated these illegal mass parole programs, we knew they lacked the resources to properly vet the applications. But when the internal investigations and anti-fraud unit within USCIS disclosed to us the level of fraud, where you have thousands of applications with people with dead social security numbers or from the same IP address. In many cases, it's obvious that they've been orchestrated applications, and yet they've still been rubber stamped through. It's part of the tip of the iceberg where we've seen millions of aliens paroled in by the Biden-Harris administration, knowing full well that it's not only very difficult to remove them once they've been brought in, but by using parole, they're also trying to fast track them to green cards and citizenship. So this whole thing is a result of an attitude of the Biden-Harris administration to not care about fraud. And the only reason Secretary Mayorkas, the impeached Secretary Mayorkas, stopped it is probably because of the election. You want to look at a guy who's responsible for the kind of policies that create this kind of atmosphere. Look at Governor Walsh of Minnesota. Okay, his voting record is a classic example of the anti-enforcement positions on immigration policy that have led to the messages going all around the world that this is one of the easy ways you get into the country. And unfortunately, we haven't seen anything from Vice President Harris explaining the nature of this kind of fraud.
Yeah, we haven't seen much explanation from the government on anything. On Governor Walz, by the way, we should point out, he is the governor of a sanctuary state. He gave people in the country illegally taxpayer-funded health care, tuition, and allowed them to get driver's licenses as well. Here's what the report says in part, just in case folks at home aren't totally ready in on this. So this is the CHNV program, the parole program that Joe Biden said would help relieve the pressure at the border. There were 2.6 million applications so far. Of those, 529,000 have been approved, 118,000 have been denied. Here's what Daniel was talking about. 100 IP addresses accounted for 51,133 of the applications. Over 100,000 forms had been filed by just a little more than 3,000 different serial sponsors. The most frequently used sponsor email address was listed on 363 different forms, and 100 street addresses were used between 124 and 739 times on unique forms. The question a lot of people at home might have is, how did DHS ever let this happen?
It's an attitude that USCIS has adopted, and we saw this initially in the Obama administration, of getting to yes, approving applications, giving the default position of yes, approve it, ask questions later. It's a mentality that starts at the political branches of the government. And from the time Biden came into office, he made it clear he was going to fix the problem by finding new lawful pathways that frankly aren't lawful to bring people in who would normally come illegally by bringing them in through other means illegally. And that's how these programs get established. You can't make illegal immigration disappear through sleight of hand by flying them in at night or coming up with these phony parole programs. We can't allow the Biden-Harris administration or Harris administration to take parole, which Congress established for a very limited use purpose for a handful of aliens every year, to suddenly turn them into a mass immigration program without limit, subject only to whatever the Secretary of DHS defines. And that's what Secretary Mayorkas has done. And the result is this kind of massive, massive fraud. And you think the smugglers, the cartels don't know what's going on? They have much better information than the average American. And you want to know why you see millions of people coming in through the Darien Gap? This is why.
Yeah, well, they're driving it, I mean, to be sure. So DHS says, well, they're going to push ahead with this program, saying it's only a temporary pause. DHS saying DHS will restart application processing as quickly as possible with appropriate safeguards. If they so badly botched it on the rollout, can they be trusted to fix it?
No, the problem is that what they're doing is illegal in its entirety. There's no congressional or statutory authorization for this kind of mass parole program on a country basis. 30,000 a month from 4 different countries, and it won't stop there. Bad practices are going to create more bad practices. They're only waiting. This is all election year politicking. The minute they feel the coast is clear, they're going to go right back into rubber stamping fraudulent applications because, John, they don't care. They're just trying to maximize the level of people they're getting into the country because they're trying to change the demographic base of the electorate. It's very simple.
Daniel Stein, good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so then we're going to go into the next article, which is real quick. This is dated August 2nd, 2024. FAIR uncovers internal DHS report indicating that the illegal Biden-Harris Cuba-Haiti-Nicaragua-Venezuela parole program is riddled with fraud. August 2nd, 2024, Washington, D.C. Internal Department of Homeland Security, DHS documents obtained by the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, revealed that the department has been rubber stamping parole applications without verifying information provided by sponsors or parolees. The explosive new report has allegedly led to the quiet pause on the CHNV program. Because this is not anything we ever really hear about in the mainstream, is it? For the most part, I would imagine. No, I don't think they're covering this one. An internal department investigation shows that the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, reviewed thousands of applications for the CHNV parole program to identify patterns, trends, and potential fraud indicators. The internal report obtained by FAIR suggests massive fraud in the application process, and specifically fraudulent information used in thousands of Form I-134A. The paperwork a sponsor files with the USCIS for each alien or undocumented migrant seeking parole through the CHNV program. Nearly 500,000 people were allowed to enter the country between October 2022 and March 2024. Oh yeah, we're gonna just go ahead and read it. I think they quoted this in the last article. It's all right though. The internal review found evidence of fraud that includes the use of fake social security numbers, including social security numbers of deceased individuals, and the use of false phone numbers. Many applications listed the same physical address. Some 100 addresses were listed on over 19,000 forms, and many parole applicants applied from a single property, including a mobile park home, warehouse, and storage unit. In addition, many applications were submitted by the same IP addresses. If this weren't bad enough, the same exact answers to forms I-134A questions were provided on hundreds of applications. In some instances, the same answer was used by over 10,000 applicants. This damning internal report further confirms that the sole focus of the Biden-Harris administration when it comes to illegal immigration is getting as many people into the country as they can by any means necessary. Well, it certainly looks like that, and at the risk of national security. Charged Stan Stein, president of FAIR, the CHNV program was established without congressional authorization and in violation of statutory requirements that parole be granted only on a case-by-case basis for explicit national interest or humanitarian purposes. Not only has the administration made a mockery of the law, DHS's internal investigation proves that USCIS ignored blatant fraud in confirmed applications despite fictitious information, continued Stein. The obvious questions that must be asked now are who gave the orders to ignore fraud? Has the agency taken steps to stop it? And what, if anything, is DHS doing to track down and potentially revoke parole for the many thousands of people granted entry after filing fraudulent applications? Remember, folks, fraud vitiates everything, null and void. It is also imperative that Congress take immediate action to shut down the illegal and fraud-ridden CHNV program that the Biden-Harris administration has been using to mask the full scope of the illegal immigration crisis created by their policies, Stein concluded. Fair summary of the findings of the DHS internal report can be found here. And that was the one we read previously. And so we've already covered that. And then we're going to read a little bit about what this organization FAIR is for those who don't know about it. I just discovered it looking up this subject for this live. So, founded in 1979, FAIR is the country's largest immigration reform group with over 3 million members and supporters nationwide. FAIR fights for immigration policies that serve national interests, not special interests. FAIR believes that immigration reform must enhance national security, improve the economy, protect jobs, preserve our environment, and establish a rule of law that is recognized and enforced. And I would agree with all of that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having people come over to, into this country the lawful way, the way it's supposed to be done through the process. But when you have fraud going on this level like that, it calls into question the motives of those responsible for allowing it, I'd say. Wow. Okay, so
Absolutely.
we got one more article here. We're going to read this one. This is August 5th, and according to boundless.com, Biden administration pauses migrant parole program amid fraud concerns. The program allows up to 30,000 migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela to legally enter the country each month. August 5th, 2024. All right. The Biden administration has paused a program that allows certain migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to legally enter the United States amid concerns about fraud among financial sponsors. And some people were talking about this a few years back, and nobody freaking wanted to hear it. So, that really makes me mad that they just did this. And now it's only finally coming out. This is retarded, man. This is not right, dude. The program known as humanitarian parole allows up to 30,000 migrants from these countries to lawfully enter the country by air each month, as long as they can prove they have someone in the U.S. to financially sponsor them for up to 2 years. The Department of Homeland Security said it had suspended the program while it investigates the backgrounds of U.S.-based financial sponsors. DHS takes any abuse of its processes very seriously, spokesperson Aaron Hager said in a statement. Out of an abundance of caution, DHS has temporarily paused the issuance of advanced travel authorizations for new beneficiaries while it undertakes a review of supporter applications. DHS will restart application processing as quickly as possible with appropriate safeguards. The Biden administration started the program in 2022 and expanded it in 2023 to curb illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border. More than 500,000 migrants had entered the country through June, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The pause came after the Fraud Detection Unit of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, found that a large number of financial sponsors were applying to sponsor multiple migrants. The news broke after the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR, a group that favors stricter immigration enforcement, claimed the program was riddled with fraud. FAIR said in a statement Friday it had obtained a government review of the fraud that showed sponsors used fake social security numbers, some belonging to deceased individuals, and false phone numbers. Multiple applications also came from the same address. According to CBS News, DHS stopped granting travel permissions to Venezuelans as part of the policy in June, before suspending the program for the remaining 3 countries. Okay, so there's that. Would you like to give your thoughts on that, Robin, for our viewers? I know you probably have a lot to say. I'm gonna take a step back and have a cigarette break while you speak your mind, then I'll chime in on mine.
All right. Well, it could not be more clear to any unbiased observer that there's funny business going on here, that there is some agenda that is being served by bringing in hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens or migrants, undocumented migrants, across the border. And that agenda is really the question here, because it is obvious to any impartial observer that the powers that be are involved deeply in this, that the Biden administration and the various agencies involved are cheating and lying in great numbers, even so much that many of the phone calls that were made or phone numbers that were given were actually from one of the agencies. And this kind of cheating and fraud that's going on such a wholesale level is obviously motivated by an intention to intentionally flood the United States with undocumented migrants. Now that means that someone wants a whole lot of people that don't come from the tradition of traditional American values, because anyone from a foreign country that does not go through the application process and the process of applying for citizenship, becoming a citizen. You see, these applying for citizenship, becoming a citizen, I know people who have migrated from Cuba. I know people who have migrated from various countries who went through a process where they were taught about American history, American values, what America stands for. And when you short circuit that process by fast tracking a whole lot of migrants, then you are simply flooding the United States with people that have disparate views and very different views of the world. And you also have taken away any checks and balances in that process to prevent other governments who may have their own motives from sending whosoever they choose. And that can be, they may empty their prisons. They may empty their insane asylums. We can't know, because these people are not going through any real vetting process at all. They're being hustled through, and then because the system is so, because someone is cheating the system so much that we can't know anything about these people, because it's all riddled with fraud. We don't know anything about who is being approved for these. So it would be a very easy thing for a terrorist country, a terrorist nation, to send terrorists across our border. And this is a very real risk that the American people are being subjected to by a government that is out of control and is interested in playing politics, because what they're expecting is that they're going to do this favor for all of these people and bring them into the United States under false pretenses with false paperwork that's all boogered up, that none of it's real, and use that process to then load the electorate in a way that they can fiddle around with the elections so that they can continue to stay in power. And that's my opinion. This is how I'm looking at it, because I can't imagine that the powers that be that are in power now could have another more reasonable reason for doing this. It would only make sense that they're looking at how they can maintain power. And when you look at the way that our government is being run, it has been, all of the agencies of government have been taken over by corporate sponsorship. In other words, defense contractors now are controlling the regulatory agencies that are responsible for determining whether or not we are giving defense contracts to defense contractors. The lobby in Congress on behalf of defense contractors is financing political campaigns. And that's just one area where we have billions and billions. Maybe I'm underestimating by a factor of thousands. Maybe it's trillions and trillions of dollars that are going towards defense that are spent because it is profitable for the defense contractors that lobby Congress and pay for to buy elections through super PACs. And so these things are all, everybody wants to have a finger on the balance scale. They all want to shift public opinion and shift the awareness of the American people in a direction that serves the agenda of maintaining power and increasing control. And we see this in the media. We see that the pharmaceutical companies absolutely owned the media through the entire COVID nightmare, because the truth was not being told to the American people. And anyone who has escaped enough from the corporate sponsored media, anyone who has educated themselves by doing careful research, and I don't just mean doing a Google search because Google's controlled too. So is Facebook. So Twitter was as well. Now, since Elon Musk bought Twitter, I've noticed that there's a lot of true information that was absolutely scrubbed from the internet almost entirely, unless you did specific searches for specific individuals. You could not find out how to treat COVID, for example, without taking an injection that was being pushed down our throats using fear tactics, and intimidation tactics. I mean, I'm one that lost a job because I wouldn't take a vaccine and I wouldn't say that I took a vaccine when I didn't. And so I was laid off from a job. So the reality is that the truth is that over and over and over, we were told safe and effective when neither of those things are true. And now, if you have escaped from the corporate sponsored media, then you will understand that there are constant emergency room visits, that the deaths of people worldwide, the death rate has risen sharply in every country where COVID vaccines were used since COVID vaccines started. So has heart trouble, so has brain dysfunction, so has all of these areas where we have been affected by something that was injected, and it's not reflected in our media. The media still is dark on this, and they still, to this day, are pushing, get a new booster, get another COVID vaccine, get the newest version. Let's do more mRNA. Well, mRNA is genetic alteration, and that was decried in the media. When people would do research and say, well, yes, it's genetic alteration, that was actually scrubbed from all the social platforms. I know, because when I was doing research, I found out that that's the truth, and I posted it on social media on about 4 different platforms, and I kept noticing that I would get suppressed, I would get banned, I would get shadow banned, I would get notified by Facebook that I was spreading disinformation. I would get notified that. So these things, when telling the truth is a way for you to get in trouble, we're already in trouble. If telling the truth is against the law, and and it was, I mean, I knew doctors who in frank discussions told me, when I brought up the idea of ivermectin for COVID, well, one doctor told me, well, he's taking it, but he can't say the I word to me because his medical license would be stripped from him. And so that was the end of the discussion, because he was not permitted to speak the truth about an effective treatment that was actually saving lives. And I know it was, because I know people whose lives were saved because they received this medicine that had been banned. And if you were watching the traditional media, you may still think, oh, that's horse dewormer. You're taking horse pills? Oh, because I know people that still believe that even today, because they haven't been exposed to the truth, because they don't realize that the media has been captured in the way that it has. And so they can't get the truth because the news is being controlled by corporate capture. And the regulatory agencies, the Food and Drug Administration, is also under the thumb of big corporations. We have a corporatocracy where these corporations own and manage and utilize the FDA for their own purposes, so that they can push whatever drugs they want. They can suppress natural cures. And we see that as well. Natural doctors often find that their life is cut short and under mysterious circumstances. There are numerous instances, but you have to dig deeper. You can't do a Google search. You have to search on Brave or DuckDuckGo, or you have to find alternative ways to find the truth, because even Google was still to this day is suppressing whatever doesn't meet the corporatocracy narrative that we are all being fed every day in the mainstream media. What do you think, Stephen?
I think you put it very beautifully. It's very well said, because you're absolutely right. They've not only done this, they've with everything we have, like they may intentionally. Okay, so what we're about to show you guys next is we're going to be talking about the Google monopoly supreme ruling against the antitrust case against Google by the federal government. That ruling came down just recently, the last day or so. That's a big one. That's a huge case, probably the biggest antitrust case of the century. The most recent one was against Microsoft back in the late 90s. For those who are not that old or old enough to remember, I am. I just aged myself, but hey, that's okay. So yeah, let's begin. We're going to start off with we're going to go a little bit out of chronological order here, because I want people to hear this article, and then we'll go back to some of the official filings from the justice.gov website relating to this. Okay. Let me share my screen, and then we'll start. Hold on, just trying to share my sound. There we go. In a Monday ruling, a federal judge deemed tech giant Google a monopolist that hugely benefited from default distribution agreements. In 2020, the Department of Justice in 38 states filed an antitrust suit against Google. The suit alleged the company had violated the Sherman Act, which was established in 1890 to promote fair competition and prevent monopolies. Judge Amit P. Mehta of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ruled that Google has illegally monopolized the internet search and ad markets during the past 10 years. After having carefully considered and weighed the witness testimony and evidence, the court reaches the following conclusion. Google is a monopolist, and it has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. It has violated Section 2 of the Sherman Act, Mehta wrote in a 286-page ruling. Google has not achieved market dominance by happenstance, he continued. It has hired thousands of highly skilled engineers, innovated consistently, and made shrewd business decisions. The result is the industry's highest quality search engine, which has earned Google the trust of hundreds of millions of daily users. But Google also has a major, largely unseen advantage over its rivals: default distribution. Meta said many users search for information through a browser that's preloaded onto a device, like Apple Safari, and that default is extremely valuable real estate. Because many users simply stick to searching with the default, Google receives billions of queries every day through those access points, he continued. Google derives extraordinary volumes of user data from such searches. In 2020, Google's internal modeling projected that it would lose between 60 to 80% of its iOS query volume should it be replaced as a default GSE search engine on Apple devices. Which would translate into net revenue losses between 28.2 and 32.7 billion, and over double that in gross revenue losses, the judge said. The power of defaults is evident. However, from the share of Bing users on Edge, Meta continued, Bing's search share on Edge is approximately 80%. Google's share is only 20%. Even if one assumes that some portion of those big searches are performed by Microsoft brand loyalists, Bing's uniquely high search share on Edge cannot be explained by that alone. The default on Edge drives queries to Bing. Okay. So this is a tweet, some wild stat by Bobby Allen, at Bobby Allen on X. Some wild stats in judge's ruling. Google's internal numbers showed that they lose up to 80% of searches on Apple devices, a revenue hit of 30 billion if they surrender default search position. The Bing example convinced Judge Mehta that defaults are Google's special sauce. The power of defaults is evident. So basically, it's a screenshot of that. The prospect of losing tens of billions in guaranteed revenue from Google, which presently come at little to no cost to Apple, disincentivizes Apple from launching its own search engine when it otherwise has built the capacity to do so. Meta concluded, the payments need not be Apple's sole reason for staying out of search to constitute an anti-competitive effect. Word salad there for a minute. DOJ heralded the decision as a huge success. This victory against Google is an historic win for the American people, said Attorney General Garland in a statement. No company, no matter how large or influential, is above the law. The Justice Department will continue to vigorously enforce our antitrust laws. This landmark decision holds Google accountable. It paves the path for innovation for generations to come and protects access to information for all Americans, added Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Cantor. This victory is reflected on the tireless efforts of the dedicated public servants at the Antitrust Division and our state law enforcement partners whose work made today's decision possible. Matt Stoller, an author who works at the American Economics Liberty Project, noted on X how the decision impacted Apple. Apple is about to lose $20 billion in pure revenue from its revenue shared with Google, he wrote. Reading through the decision, but one thing that's very clear is that every single big business in America will now have to consider whether their exclusive contracts are legal. Apple is about to lose $20 billion in pure revenue from its revenue shared with Google. And there's a chart of it. Oh yeah, it's already gone down a bit too. Yep. This is the first major antitrust case against a large tech company since the federal government sued Microsoft in the late 90s. Political reports. The ruling is a boon to a series of lawsuits filed in the ensuing years against Meta, Amazon, and Apple as well, a second one aimed at Google. The ruling provides a historic boost to the antitrust authorities' endeavor to rein in the abuse of market power by Google and other dominant tech companies and will have a similar landmark effect as the government's challenge to Microsoft more than 20 years ago. Boston University professor Florian Ederer, who teaches antitrust and economics, told the outlet, the win also signals the antitrust laws that were created over 100 years ago can still work today. A separate trial to determine a remedy for following the ruling has not yet been scheduled. So that's interesting. Yeah. All right. So here's the original lawsuit. I don't know if I have it in okay, it kind of already covered a lot of it, but we'll go through it here in a minute. I don't want to be too long in the article, but let's speak on what we just read, Robin, real quick. Put your thoughts into this, because we're gonna even go deeper and get into the Zach Voorhees Project Veritas leaks from 2019, where he exposed their blacklist and machine learning fairness algorithm, which is how they're doing the bias search results with the censorship, and that's how they're doing it. I mean, we witnessed it the other day. There's a let me just show people. I'm going to show our viewers real quick. So about 3 weeks ago, many of us noticed that online, if you go to type an assassination attempt on, and you type in STR, and you like most people think Trump would come up first, right? Well, it didn't, and the algorithm was intentionally, literally trying to hide it from people, creating a bias. So I tried it myself at the time. It's since been fixed, but I presume that probably has more to do with the ruling than anything else. But there's one example, one screenshot somebody else did. Let's see if we can get bigger here. Here we go. See? And I tried it myself, and I had the same issue. And I remember searching for it like right after it happened in that query, and it came right up. So that's one thing. Now, that's a result of machine learning fairness, what Zach Voorhees exposed from Google internal documents. And so we're going to get into that. However, let me let you have the floor, Robin, and give us your thoughts on just that one article we just read.
Well, many people who, what have been called conspiracy theorists, and now it is known that most conspiracy theorists are people who are well informed about what the facts really are and are trying to communicate what actually reflects reality to those who are less well informed. So when those of us that have the kind of knowledge that comes from a very healthy skepticism of what's going on in the world and a desire to understand what is being hidden from us. And so we go digging and digging and digging. Those of us have known for years that all of these things, such as Google and Apple and all these major corporations, were structuring the algorithms in a way that they could push a particular agenda on the American people. And the algorithms are designed now so that whatever it is that your interests are, they want to keep you engaged. So they'll keep feeding you whatever it is that you do a search on, whatever it is that you're looking at now, they'll try to find something similar to that so that they can keep you, because their real goal is to keep you engaged in that search engine, that social media service, that they want to maintain and grow their empire. And you are the value.
So you're the product, basically. You're the product.
Yeah.
We're not the customers. It's free, so we're the product.
Right. The more they have a grasp on your mind.
I don't think people realize that they mostly. Where do you think Facebook gets most of its freaking money from? It's because it sells its data to advertisers. It sells your data to advertisers. That's why it's free, folks. I hope you all know that.
Advertisers go to Facebook and they say, "Well, I'd like a person between 30 and 33 years old who makes above $60,000 a year, who is interested in a vacation in Rio de Janeiro," and they can give you 10,000 of those because they know so much about you as a person that they will know if that fits your profile or not. And then you've been thinking about a trip to Rio de Janeiro, and maybe you've done a search, or maybe you've just looked at some pictures of Rio, whatever it may be. They know that you're a hot prospect for an advertiser. Well, that advertiser pays good money to put an ad right in your face. And so this is why it seems like there's such intuition going on when you search what's the best nail clipper, and all of a sudden you've got nail clippers being sold to you on Facebook. Or I mean, it's really it's the algorithms that are analyzing your data and then selling it to advertisers. So you are the product, because what the contents of your mind are very valuable to whoever wants to sell something that you might want to buy. So that's valuable information for them, and that commands a premium price. And this is why you look at Amazon, you look at Twitter, you look at Facebook, you look at any of these social media giants, and they are monetizing you. And the way that they're able to do that is that they have data about you, they have information about you. So when Google has been able to monopolize search engine because they got good at it, because they got really good at it, and then they also took steps to block any competitors, to push down in the search engines. For instance, if you did a search on ivermectin, then the first 12, 15 articles would all be about horse pills. These things. Well, most people are unaware that this is a Nobel Prize winning medication that has been used for, I don't know how many years, but 20, 30, 40, I don't know. But it's been used for many, many years in many parts of the world, and been one of the most harmless medications there is. And it's extremely effective against coronaviruses such as COVID. So these facts would mean that the emergency use authorization for all of the mRNA vaccines that were developed were unnecessary. And if you have a practical, useful medicine that will treat a disease, then you can't get an emergency use authorization for a novel and new vaccine or treatment because there's no need for it.
Absolutely.
So-
That's why they tried to smear anybody who was using ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, because
Hydroxychloroquine.
if those drugs were readily available and known to have worked, and there was no they were generic, to be used off label, meaning
Right.
there would be no profit be able to be made from these vaccines.
No big
Because they
pharmaceutical.
went out of their way to destroy the credibility of anybody who took it, their livelihoods, even like it's insane what's happened, but they've used this advantage. And what we're about to start getting into here after we finish going over the a little bit more of the well, I find it funny. It's like I find it funny that they want to sue them for antitrust laws, but they don't want to talk about all the censorship aspect of it with Google's blacklist and freaking. They're not getting into any of that, or
Right.
or even the machine learning fairness algorithm, which we're going to go into right now. This is according to Google's own internal documents, folks. So, yeah. Anyway, so I'm just gonna
Let's roll, baby.
I'm gonna let the screen reader read it so we can get through it. These next two, because I want to get to the machine learning fairness. The links are also in the description, folks, on all the social media except for X. For whatever reason, I can't do a large description there, but go check us out on YouTube or Rumble, and we got the full source links there in those descriptions. Let's see. Let me get this up on the screen. I'm just gonna let the screen reader read it real quick. Let me share sound. Okay.
An official website of the United States government. Press release. Justice Department sues Monopolist, Google for violating antitrust laws. Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. For immediate release. Office of Public Affairs. Department files complaint against Google to restore competition in search and search advertising markets. Note, click for Attorney General Barr's statement and Deputy Attorney General Rosen's remarks. Today, the Department of Justice, along with 11 state attorneys general, filed a civil antitrust lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia to stop Google from unlawfully maintaining monopolies through anti-competitive and exclusionary practices in the search and search advertising markets and to remedy the competitive harms. The participating state attorneys general offices represent Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, South Carolina, and Texas. Today, millions of Americans rely on the internet and online platforms for their daily lives. Competition in this industry is vitally important, which is why today's challenge against Google, the gatekeeper of the internet, for violating antitrust laws is a monumental case both for the Department of Justice and for the American people, said Attorney General William Barr. Since my confirmation, I have prioritized the department's review of online market-leading platforms to ensure that our technology industries remain competitive. This lawsuit strikes at the heart of Google's grip over the internet for millions of American consumers, advertisers, small businesses and entrepreneurs beholden to an unlawful monopolist. As with its historic antitrust actions against AT&T in 1974 and Microsoft in 1998, the department is again enforcing the Sherman Act to restore the role of competition and open the door to the next wave of innovation, this time in vital digital markets, said Deputy Attorney General Jeffrey A. Rosen. As one of the wealthiest companies on the planet with a market value of $1 trillion, Google is the monopoly gatekeeper to the internet for billions of users and countless advertisers worldwide. For years, Google has accounted for almost 90% of all search queries in the United States and has used anti-competitive tactics to maintain and extend its monopolies in search and search advertising. As alleged in the complaint, Google has entered into a series of exclusionary agreements that collectively lock up the primary avenues through which users access search engines, and thus the Internet, by requiring that Google be set as the preset default general search engine on billions of mobile devices and computers worldwide and, in many cases, prohibiting pre-installation of a competitor. In particular, the complaint alleges that Google has unlawfully maintained monopolies in search and search advertising by 1. Entering into exclusivity agreements that forbid pre-installation of any competing search service. 2. Entering into tying and other arrangements that force pre-installation of its search applications in prime locations on mobile devices and make them undeletable, regardless of consumer preference. 3. Entering into long-term agreements with Apple that require Google to be the default, and de facto exclusive, general search engine on Apple's popular Safari browser and other Apple search tools. 4. Generally using monopoly profits to buy preferential treatment for its search engine on devices, web browsers, and other search access points, creating a continuous and self-reinforcing cycle of monopolization. These and other anti-competitive practices harm competition and consumers, reducing the ability of innovative new companies to develop, compete, and discipline Google's behavior. The antitrust laws protect our free market economy and forbid monopolists from engaging in anti-competitive practices. They also empower the Department of Justice to bring cases like this one to remedy violations and restore competition, as it has done for over a century in notable cases involving monopolists over other critical industries undergirding the American economy like Standard Oil and the AT&T telephone monopoly. Decades ago, the department's case against Microsoft recognized that the antitrust laws forbid anti-competitive agreements by high-technology monopolists to require pre-installed default status, to shut off distribution channels to rivals, and to make software undeletable. The complaint alleges that Google is using similar agreements itself to maintain and extend its own dominance. The complaint alleges that Google's anti-competitive practices have had harmful effects on competition and consumers. Google has foreclosed any meaningful search competitor from gaining vital distribution and scale, eliminating competition for a majority of search queries in the United States. By restricting competition in search, Google's conduct has harmed consumers by reducing the quality of search, including on dimensions such as privacy, data protection, and use of consumer data, lessening choice in search, and impeding innovation. By suppressing competition in advertising, Google has the power to charge advertisers more than it could in a competitive market and to reduce the quality of the services it provides them. Through filing the lawsuit, the department seeks to stop Google's anti-competitive conduct and restore competition for American consumers, advertisers, and all companies now reliant on the Internet economy. Google is a limited liability company organized and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware, and is headquartered in Mountain View, California. Google is owned by Alphabet Incorporated, a publicly traded company incorporated and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware and headquartered in Mountain View, California.
Interesting.
Updated October 21st,
Delaware.
2020. Attachment.
Who else do we know from
Google
Delaware?
complaint filed, PDF,
Goes by the acronym
784
POTUS.
kilobytes. Topic: Antitrust. Components.
Interesting.
Antitrust Division Office of the Attorney General. Press release number 20-1124. Related content.
Oh, sorry about that, folks. That was dated October 20, I think 20th, 2021 or 2020, I believe. This one is dated Tuesday, January 24th. That was when the initial suit was filed, the October date. So this is January 24th, 2023. These are the two filings that initial article right here was referencing. So let's see. We already read that first one, right? This one right here?
So,
Yeah. Oh yeah, we did. Okay, I
yeah, we
remember.
do.
Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm gonna screen read it.
An official website of the United States government. Press release. Justice Department sues Google for monopolizing digital advertising technologies. Tuesday, January 24, 2023. For immediate release. Office of Public Affairs. Through serial acquisitions and anti-competitive auction manipulation, Google subverted competition in internet advertising technologies. Today, the Justice Department, along with the Attorneys General of California, Colorado, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, Tennessee, and Virginia, filed a civil antitrust suit against Google for monopolizing multiple digital advertising technology products in violation of Sections 1 and 2 of the Sherman Act. Filed in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia, the complaint alleges that Google monopolizes key digital advertising technologies, collectively referred to as the ad tech stack, that website publishers depend on to sell ads and that advertisers rely on to buy ads and reach potential customers. Website publishers use ad tech tools to generate advertising revenue that supports the creation and maintenance of a vibrant open web, providing the public with unprecedented access to ideas, artistic expression, information, goods, and services. Through this monopolization lawsuit, the Justice Department and state attorneys general seek to restore competition in these important markets and obtain equitable and monetary relief on behalf of the American public. As alleged in the complaint, over the past 15 years, Google has engaged in a course of anti-competitive and exclusionary conduct that consisted of neutralizing or eliminating ad tech competitors through acquisitions, wielding its dominance across digital advertising markets to force more publishers and advertisers to use its products, and thwarting the ability to use competing products. In doing so, Google cemented its dominance in tools relied on by website publishers and online advertisers, as well as the digital advertising exchange that runs ad auctions. Today's complaint alleges that Google has used anti-competitive, exclusionary, and unlawful conduct to eliminate or severely diminish any threat to its dominance over digital advertising technologies, said Attorney General Merrick B. Garland. No matter the industry and no matter the company, the Justice Department will vigorously enforce our antitrust laws to protect consumers, safeguard competition, and ensure economic fairness and opportunity for all. The complaint filed today alleges a pervasive and systemic pattern of misconduct through which Google sought to consolidate market power and stave off free market competition, said Deputy Attorney General Lisa O. Monaco. In pursuit of outsized profits, Google has caused great harm to online publishers and advertisers and American consumers. This lawsuit marks an important milestone in the department's efforts to hold big technology companies accountable for violations of the antitrust laws. The department's landmark action against Google underscores our commitment to fighting the abuse of market power, said Associate Attorney General Vanita Gupta. We allege that Google has captured publishers' revenue for its own profits and punished publishers who sought out alternatives. Those actions have weakened the free and open internet and increased advertising costs for businesses and for the United States government, including for our military. Today's lawsuit seeks to hold Google to account for its long-standing monopolies in digital advertising technologies that content creators use to sell ads and advertisers use to buy ads on the open internet, said Assistant Attorney General Jonathan Cantor of the Justice Department's Antitrust Division. Our complaint sets forth detailed allegations explaining how Google engaged in 15 years of sustained conduct that had, and continues to have, the effect of driving out rivals, diminishing competition, inflating advertising costs, reducing revenues for news publishers and content creators, snuffing out innovation, and harming the exchange of information and ideas in the public sphere. Google now controls the digital tool that nearly every major website publisher uses to sell ads on their websites, Publisher Ad Server. It controls the dominant advertiser tool that helps millions of large and small advertisers buy ad inventory, Advertiser Ad Network. And it controls the largest advertising exchange, Ad Exchange, a technology that runs real-time auctions to match buyers and sellers of online advertising. Image description, graphic of digital advertising market. The digital advertising market is divided into three sections: sell-side inventory on the left, buy-side demand on the right, and an ad exchange in the middle. Sell-side inventory is made up of website publishers that flow to Google's DoubleClick for Publishers Publisher Ad Server, which has greater than 90% of market share. Google Ad Exchange, which is greater than or equal to 50% of the ad exchange market share, receives bid requests from the publisher ad server, sends them to the buy-side demand, receives bid responses from the buy-side demand and sends them back to the publisher ad server. Buy-side demand is made up of advertisers that flow to either Google Ads Advertiser Ad Network, small and large advertisers, which has ±80% market share, or Google's Display and Video 360 Demand-Side Platform, DSP, agencies, large advertisers which has ±40% share. Google's anti-competitive conduct has included 1. Acquiring competitors, engaging in a pattern of acquisitions to obtain control over key digital advertising tools used by website publishers to sell advertising space. 2. Forcing adoption of Google's tools, locking in website publishers to its newly acquired tools by restricting its unique, must-have advertiser demand to its ad exchange, and in turn, conditioning effective real-time access to its ad exchange on the use of its publisher ad server. 3. Distorting auction competition, limiting real-time bidding on publisher inventory to its ad exchange, and impeding rival ad exchanges' ability to compete on the same terms as Google's ad exchange. And 4. Auction manipulation, manipulating auction mechanics across several of its products to insulate Google from competition, deprive rivals of scale, and halt the rise of rival technologies. As a result of its illegal monopoly, and by its own estimates, Google pockets on average more than 30% of the advertising dollars that flow through its digital advertising technology products. For some transactions and for certain publishers and advertisers, it takes far more. Google's anti-competitive conduct has suppressed alternative technologies, hindering their adoption by publishers, advertisers, and rivals. The Sherman Act embodies America's enduring commitment to the competitive process and economic liberty. For over a century, the department has enforced the antitrust laws against unlawful monopolists to unfetter markets and restore competition. To redress Google's anti-competitive conduct, the department seeks both equitable relief on behalf of the American public as well as treble damages for losses sustained by federal government agencies that overpaid for web display advertising. This enforcement action marks the first monopolization case in approximately half a century in which the department has sought damages for a civil antitrust violation. In 2020, the Justice Department filed a civil antitrust suit against Google for monopolizing search and search advertising, which are different markets from the digital advertising technology markets at issue in the lawsuit filed today. The Google search litigation is scheduled for trial in September 2023. Google is a limited liability company organized and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware, with a headquarters in Mountain View, California. Google's global network business generated approximately $31.7 billion in revenues in 2021. Google is owned by Alphabet Incorporated, a publicly traded company incorporated and existing under the laws of the state of Delaware and headquartered in Mountain View, California.
Updated February 2nd, 2023. So that was the other article that this one right here was referring to. So the ruling that came down obviously did not go good for Google, which is good for us, I think, in the long run. Now, I want to go and want to play something for you guys. This is Zach Voorhees' testimony to the Texas Senate and resulted in a unanimous decision by Democrats and Republicans to empower the Texas state attorney to start issuing subpoenas against Google and other big tech companies. This is June 6th of this year, I believe. So, and he spells it out perfectly what happened. Well, Google did.
And a whistleblower against Google in 2019, risking my career and livelihood to warn the public about Google's plans to meddle in the 2020 election using a program called Machine Learning Fairness.
Grant, we had a unanimous vote. Every Republican and every Democrat authorized me as the chair to issue these subpoenas.
If you've used Google Earth or YouTube for game consoles, you're familiar with my work. Let's talk about Google's censorship AI system called Machine Learning Fairness. I discovered this program while searching for information about Project Dragonfly, probably a fake project meant to misdirect the public. Make no mistake, Machine Learning Fairness is and has always been the real censorship program, and it is massive. The goal was to, quote, program the public to align with Google's corporate values. Those are their words.
But it's wrong for anyone to have this kind of power to manipulate American elections. And he's right. And in Texas, we're not going to stand for it. We're going to shine a light on what they're doing so that everybody can see.
Step 1, training data are collected and classified. Step 2, algorithms are programmed. Step 3, media are filtered, ranked, aggregated, or generated. And step 4, people like us are programmed. That's a direct quote from their slides. And it wasn't just in one slide, it was littered throughout the company. This process was repeated in a cycle, with step 4 feeding back into step 1. This sounds like something out of a conspiracy theory, but it's real. Google rewrote their news algorithms, specifically trained on mainstream media stories targeting Trump, such as his fight with Comey. Systems like real-time events, Real-Time Boost, and HiveMind assign higher amplification scores to stories related to targeting Trump. Google's internal documents revealed their stance on, quote, algorithmic unfairness. They stated that even factually accurate representations could be considered algorithmically unfair and removed. And let me just quote them. For example, imagine a Google image query for CEOs shows predominantly men. Even if it were a factually accurate representation of the world, it would be algorithmic unfairness. In some cases, it may be appropriate to take no action if the system accurately reflects current reality, while in other cases, it may be desirable to consider how we might help society reach a more fair and equitable state via either product intervention or broader corporate social responsibility efforts, end quote. Let's talk about news ranking. News sites that supported Democrats were ranked with the highest quality and trustworthiness. Here's a partial list. Wall Street Journal, 8.53. CBS News, 6.57. CNN, 6.0. Fox News, 5.2. Russia Today, 4.57. The Young Turks, 2.53. Alex Jones Network, negative 1.56. At the bottom of the list is Next News Network at negative 3.35. Let me reiterate, the foreign propaganda outlet Russia Today was scored 7 points higher than the Next News Network, one of the top YouTube news networks in America. Since my disclosure, Next News Network has been permanently demonetized and will soon be bankrupted. These sound more like the actions we'd expect from a Russian propaganda complex. But shockingly, it's the actions of Google. At YouTube, I observed 40 different AIs classifying videos under various labels. Influencers like Dave Rubin were labeled as right-wing news outlets with fake news labels. The justification was always user safety. But in 2020, this system of censorship went so far as to ban mentions of vitamin C, turmeric, and vitamin D during the pandemic.
anything that is medically unsubstantiated. So people saying like, take vitamin C, take turmeric, like those are all will cure you. Those are the examples of things that would be a violation of our policy. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
So you're not just putting the truth next to the lie, you're taking the lie down. That's a pretty aggressive approach.
Despite public statements to Congress, Google has many blacklists, some literally named blacklist.txt. For example, the Eighth Amendment of the Constitution of Ireland, shockingly, was blacklisted from YouTube. Public needs to know what's going on.
What recommendations would you have for this legislature to take action to address the issues you address?
My recommendation is subpoenas would be filed against Google for any documents that have the name blacklist.txt related to Google, YouTube, and their news search corpuses. I would also ask that you subpoena their documents related to rankings of media outlets. Machine learning fairness is so huge, I don't even know how you would even swallow that. That is going to be such a huge bombshell that it just needs to get into the public disclosure. So it's those three things: machine learning fairness, blacklists, and their media rankings.
Thank you. And specifically for you, what was the impact of your disclosure?
One of the major stories of 2019, the biggest disclosure by Project Veritas, their biggest story they've ever had. We had two disclosures, one in June when I was anonymous. In August, I came out publicly after being raided by the FBI, including the bomb squad, Sheriff's Department, and SFPD, with a standoff that ended at gunpoint. So, and it was all due to a wellness check, and I just didn't want to come out, and so it just kept on escalating, and they shut down the streets from 20th of Valencia to 22nd, and I realized that if I don't come out, they're going to come in. So I came out at gunpoint, surrendered myself, literally Pizzagate. Right? And if you look at Google Trends, you'll see that fake news trended one day after the Pizzagate released the files. With the Las Vegas massacre, that allowed them to inject their YouTube blacklist, which didn't exist prior to this event. And from there, it was like basically covering up, rumors that this was a false flag event. And then it went all the way down to, as I noted, the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution of Ireland. Right? And the last term that I saw when I disclosed this list was AMLO. Now, what does AMLO mean? That is the nickname of the Mexican president at the time. So, they started off possibly with noble goals, but at the end, they were censoring constitutional amendments for our allies and presidential candidates in other countries.
Well, how important is it that these subpoenas have been approved to go out? And do you know yet what specifically you'll be asking for?
Texas Senate committees have subpoena power. We rarely use it. It's a big deal. We used it a couple of years ago against BlackRock, State Street, those firms through ESG that are taking Texas money and using it against us. We used it then, and we're using it now. It takes a 2/3 vote in the committee to do this because it's a big deal. Grant, we had a unanimous vote. Every Republican and every Democrat authorized me as the chair to issue these subpoenas to get this information because this affects everyone. You had Professor Epstein. It was a great clip you played. He also told us in the hearing, I'm not a Republican. I lean left. But it's wrong for anyone to have this kind of power to manipulate American elections. And he's right. And in Texas, we're not going to stand for it. We're going to shine a light on what they're doing so that everybody can see.
All right. So you guys saw that. I think I already showed you this. So we're going to get into machine learning fairness and could go over some of these, and then we'll get into Google's blacklist. So this is one of the PDFs released on machine learning fairness that Zach Voorhees dropped in 2019. Vanguard projects. These are Google's internal documents. So this is evidence, folks. He put it out. It's open source. It's all available. You can go download it yourself from the internet. It's got it. He's got a link to his as well on his site. These projects have committed to making fairness a P1, priority one. I guess it's priority one. Going above and beyond to ensure Google's products work for everyone. Scorecard. Establish a proactive, oriented best practices and the formal process framework to support fair and inclusive machine learning development, lowering risk, opening up opportunities for market growth, and making remediation easier should unfairness arise. So who gets to dictate what's fair? That's my question. Nobody should have that authority. That's why we have free speech. You know, that's ridiculous. But they're controlling the freaking flow of information based on a freaking, oh my God, dude. It's being misused. Fairness policy. Establish the company-wide normative and value-based positions necessary for teams to pursue fairness work. These company-wide policies will be complementary to the scorecard and include positions on risk identification, sensitive subgroups, and incident response. Subgroup discovery. Demographic subgroupings using self-identified seed data for model analysis that protects access to unique users. Discovery of demographic subgroups in data that have not been annotated. Meeting room intelligence. Ensure a successful launch of an inclusive video conferencing product in fall of 2017, including auto zoom functionality and image quality that performs well across subgroups. Display ads quality signals. Correct or mitigate unfair inferences used in display ads targeting. YouTube restrictive mode. Ameliorate unnecessary filtering of LGBT content in restricted mode and expand the work to other YouTube classifiers. Okay. Face net or false negative rate for non-white faces comparable to white faces. Wow. I'd say they're pretty racist. Holy shit. It's you know what I think this is? It's like a digital version of what's referred to as equity.
What?
Huh?
What did you say?
I said it. Could you hear me?
No.
Oh, I said. Oh wow. Hold up.
I can't hear you at all now.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Let me adjust my mic volume. It's probably pretty low. Hold on. How about now? Can you hear me better?
I believe so.
Better?
Yeah, that's coming through clear at the moment.
All right, cool. So I said it kind of seems like a digital version of what's called equity.
Right. Right.
Oh my God. Okay, so improving recommendation models to better serve underserved demographics, females and users 35 plus. Okay. Conversation AI, mitigating false positives for non-toxic comments that contain language related to protected classes. Moment quality score unaffected by gender or race. Face SDK and human sensing attributes. Accuracy of face person understanding components used in VSS, mobile vision, cloud vision APIs with regard to demographic variables, race, age, and gender. Image search results. Mitigate result sets that are unrepresentative or offensive in the way they manifest societal stereotypes and or historical unfairness. Who gets to decide what's historical unfairness?
Right. And
the history is history. You can't change history and the context of it.
Of societal stereotypes
what
is the one that they are going to basically edit.
Yeah. And control the narrative, basically. Wow. I mean, problem with this is whoever's in charge of the freaking of this program or you know whoever gets to freaking that's regardless of what side it's going to be their agenda that's going to be pushed, their narrative, know.
Right.
That's an abuse of power in and of itself because they're creating an intentional bias with this system.
Right.
The bias analytics tools for use in vision model development processes. Demographic classifiers for model analysis. Diverse data sets for all widely used visual human understanding components.
Reply. Mitigate unwanted and unwarranted subgroup inferences in suggested replies.
Thank you. I'm just like sitting here. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm going through each one of these. I'm like, holy shit. Data labeling pipeline, measuring and reporting data diversity for machine learning. They're basically teaching the computer or the search engine to be how to be woke.
It's what the idea is. We want a group of people.
That's funny. That's too funny. Holy
what
shit.
biases we would like it to have.
Right.
We want it to be biased. We just want to make sure it's got the right bias.
The right bias.
We don't want it unbiased. We want it biased.
We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings now with our search engine.
Feelings with our
oh my God.
So make sure that we have bias in our searches so that people can't find anything that might have any bias in it, because we want only the bias that we choose
pretty much
available for people to find, and any other bias we don't want them to know about. We're structuring their thinking, we're controlling their mind, we're programming what they will then come to believe as members of our society where we're the predominant search engine.
All right, so I'm going to read this part. What qualifies as a Vanguard project? A focused and strategic fairness effort with a dedicated project point person. We are committed to supporting these teams in every way possible, including gaining support from senior leadership, tracking and publicizing progress, and building out a case study to share processes, findings, outcomes, and recommendations. Vanguard projects fall into the following three categories. Production, increasing fairness for a specific measurable facet of a product. Research, surfacing actionable and measurable fairness opportunities for one or more products. Infrastructure, providing reusable and scalable fairness componentry for one or more products. Okay, so that's their own internal document on what Vanguard is, what they call Vanguard. Now, this is a resources PDF. The links are in the description, folks, on all the all the social media except for Telegram and X, I believe, due to the description character limit. The definition, algorithm unfairness definition. The definition articulates the range of algorithmic unfairness that can occur in products and establishes a shared understanding and language for internal efforts related to this issue. Metrics and measurements for fairness. Google strives for algorithmic fairness across products. This document starts to outline the nitty-gritty of how we can measure and bolster optimally equal experiences for users at the level of the math, algorithms, and code. That's referring to computer programming code, which I'm familiar with as a software engineer, which is why I'm going to go through this next thing, their little presentation on how they're going to do it with the algorithm, basically, and explain what they're talking about. So that's going to be interesting because I haven't covered it in depth yet, but we're going to now. Metrics and measurements for fairness. Google strives for algorithm. Okay, we already read that. And machine learning fairness communication best practices. Describing best practices for communicating on topics related to the inclusion, fairness, and transparency of machine learning algorithms, guidance for creating, reviewing, and sharing documents related to machine learning fairness, and when and how to maintain attorney-client privilege. Comms, PR, best practices for speaking and posting about machine learning fairness. Planning to present or write about machine learning fairness. As an AI-first company, Google aims to develop the benefits of machine learning for everyone. Building inclusive algorithms, datasets, and products is crucial to this mission. The PR comms team provides guidance on how to best deliver your message. Model understanding. Whether seeking to improve performance of machine learning systems, combat problems with machine learning fairness, conduct research into model behavior, or deploy machine learning in products in a non-trivial way, gaining better understanding of models can be extremely valuable. While there is no one-size-fits-all approach in many open areas of research, there are also many useful tools that exist today. Fairness tools. A growing list of available tools to help train, interpret, visualize, and debug models in service of fairness. The Glassbox group has developed machine learning algorithms to help ensure fairness. Equality of opportunity in machine learning. At the heart of the approach is the idea that individuals who qualify for a desirable outcome should have an equal chance. Oops, go back. Hold on, sorry about that, folks. Accidentally clicked the link that I couldn't open anyway. Anyways, hold on, where were we at? There we go. At the heart of the approach is the idea that individuals who qualify for a desirable outcome should have an equal chance of being correctly classified for this outcome. Machine learning tests certified. Based on years of prior experience using machine learning at Google in systems such as ad click prediction and the Sybil machine learning platform, the EFX team have developed a set of best practices for using machine learning systems. They present these practices as a set of actionable tests and offer a scoring system to measure how ready for production a given machine learning system is. Okay, so now here we're going to get into seeds of change. Seeds of change, the root causes of algorithmic unfairness and a path forward. This is 2019, I think, when this, or no, this is actually probably a bit earlier than that. Training data are collected and annotated. Model is trained and evaluated. Media are filtered, ranked, aggregated, or generated. Input, output. Training data are collected and annotated. Model is trained and evaluated. Media are filtered, ranked, and aggregated or generated. So this is, it's already done this step. And that's going to have the next step right here. There's a little diagram they put together for a presentation on, a visual for how the algorithm would work when they were first learning to design it at Google. Collusion. This is censorship of the highest order. It's basically custom propaganda, if you will, if you have access to this freaking thing. Or it can be one controlling the lever on this machine learning this algorithm. This is a huge problem. Data collection and annotation, because it's distorting the reality of how things really are. Oh, unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
We don't want to report on reality. We want to.
Right. We just want to report our little perception of our narrow view of how the world works. And if anything that goes against that, we're going to stop it. I mean, that's kind of how they're coming at it.
Get ivermectin, shut him down.
That's the danger when you have one group or one company controlling all the flow of information like that. That's why, I mean, I think that's why this antitrust thing is a good thing, but I also think they're also trying to use it to cover their asses for colluding with Google to censor people in certain subjects. Because we all know the government and freaking Google and Facebook all colluded, from what we know in the Twitter files.
Absolutely. Our own government was deeply involved with big tech to manipulate public opinion to gain the outcome that served big pharma, which financed campaigns of all of the politicians and all of the, they bought they bought researchers to say what they wanted them to say.
Yeah.
They suppressed the voices of real doctors that were really treating patients, that really knew that they were lying to people and wanted to say so. They suppressed the people who did research on their own and discovered that they were lying to people and started to tell other people, hey, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. This is a bunch of lies. It's a pack of lies here. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Those voices were suppressed. I was one of them,
Yeah, no, many people were suppressed because of this. And they made it so that you can't even, it's so fucked up because it's not right.
Telling the truth is suppressed by the government, then telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. And
yes,
that's what we're doing. This is the revolution, folks. Welcome to the revolution.
Pretty much. It's an information war.
Yeah, it is.
Data collection and annotation, sampling error, non-sampling error, insensitivity to sample size, correspondence bias, in-group bias, bias blind spot, confirmation bias, subjective validation, experimenter's bias, choice supportive bias, neglect of probability, anecdotal fallacy, illusion of validity, automation bias.
We do not read through the within the data, which is.
Go ahead.
I think it's germane. It was the first one in the list within the data: reporting bias, selection bias, overgeneralization bias, outgroup homogeneity bias, stereotypical bias, historical unfairness. We just skip past that one, and I think it's a mistake to skip over it.
Where is it?
It's the very first one. It's on the left-hand side.
Is it?
Yeah. It's
crap.
And it's
I missed it.
Yeah, you missed
You're right.
it.
I was too zoomed in. Holy crap, you're right. All right, here we go. Within the data, reporting bias, selection bias. Or do you want to go ahead and read this one?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll read it with commentary.
Go ahead. Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Please do.
Within the data, reporting bias. In other words, if someone's reporting the truth and it doesn't match up with what we want the people to believe. Selection bias. In other words, if someone's selecting the truth and it doesn't match up with what we want the people to believe. Overgeneralization bias. Outgroup homogeneity bias. Stereotypical bias. Well, are we using stereotypes? Whose stereotypes of what? Let's use the stereotype tinfoil hat, shall we? Let's use conspiracy theorists, shall we? Are these stereotypes? Oh, but they're allowed. Historical unfairness. And we all know that there's been historical unfairness. There really has in a lot of ways. But who's the final arbiter of what period of history we're going to look at and what the historical unfairness that we're going to use?
What rose-colored lens are we going to look at it with is the question.
Right.
There's historical unfairness. Well, historical accuracy and context is important if you want people to understand history and not repeat it.
Right.
And what you're effectively doing here is Google's intentionally creating a bias. So because everybody uses it and they are looking for information, they're only going to get it slanted a certain way,
right.
and most people are not going to know that this is going on because right. It's intuitive. It's designed that way. But those of us in the tech field, like myself, understand what they're doing here. It's basically they're shaping the narrative through control of all the whole search, and ad space and everything.
Let's examine implicit associations. If you say marshmallow root, implicitly you're talking about herbal medicine, and you will be suppressed because herbal medicine is an effective and useful and historically validated form of healing and well-being and health. And so implicit associations that doesn't match up with what we're pushing, which is the big pharma bias, suppress that account.
There's been a lot of that with during COVID, folks. A lot of that, they always, you're dangerous conspiracy theories. No, they always label people that are trying to get out this kind of information as that because they're trying to suppress the information from being accessible to other people by the mass. You don't do that if there's nothing to it, then then you shouldn't have any reason to want to censor it. Unless you're afraid that it might expose what you're actually doing.
Right. The RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running for president and as an independent candidate. And many people think, RFK is polling at what, 2%? But in fair polls against either Trump or Kamala Harris, he wins. And this is something that you'll never hear on the mainstream media because they want to suppress his candidacy. As a matter of fact,
they already have been by not giving him Secret Service protection and denying him that and pulling that from him. How long ago he had it, and then they pulled it from him, and then now they gave it back after the assassination attempt on Trump. That pisses me off. If anybody should have that from the get-go, that far out, it should have been him.
Even
considering what happened to his dad and his uncle.
5 days in New York, proving that he's a New Yorker, despite the fact that he's lived in, I think we said this earlier, he's lived in New York for 50 years. His driver's license is in New York. His house is in New York. And yet the DNC, Democratic National Committee, has challenged his right to be on the ballot in New York as a New Yorker. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It is. It's total election interference in and of itself by the DNC
as
against
we did on
Kennedy, and it really gets under my skin. It's the relatives of his relatives of his that have obviously either been bought off or they, just.
Or they actually have an honest disagreement with him about things.
Oh, right. But they're out there like talking out against him, like he's a conspiracy theorist. Like, no, dude, he's not. You would not have to do that if you had nothing. If you weren't afraid of the information like that. There's no reason you do that because you don't want to get that information to get out. There's something to hide
in the list that we're reading here. After implicit stereotypes, prejudice. Well, the meaning of prejudice is prejudging, to judge before one has all the information, or to judge based on a partial information.
Right.
It is, and the whole idea of what Google is doing is to prejudice people in the direction that they choose. So they will give us a very narrow definition of prejudice that will probably be race and probably be religion, but won't include political prejudice against a candidate who has a very strong platform that would be very beneficial for the American people, but not very beneficial for a lot of the oligarchy and the corporatocracy that run the country. Wouldn't be good for the military-industrial complex. So he's just kept off of the TV entirely as much as possible. You hardly see him at all in any of the mainstream media because they're trying to prejudice you against this man. Why? Because he's good for us all. That's why.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that what they did to him was so fucked up. Like, they forced him off the Democratic ticket, like running as a Democrat because they wouldn't let him. They didn't want him to. They completely shut him out, and he could have totally won that. He could have totally won that primary. And if he had been allowed to, I would have totally voted for him myself. In this upcoming election.
Kamala Harris, who was never elected to run for the Democrats, but simply assigned. Oh, well, if the president doesn't, for whatever reason, like completely unpopular, doesn't want to run, then we'll put the vice president there. That's what we'll do. There was it's just been absurd how hard they are lobbying the American people to believe a particular narrative. Oh, it's impossible for this person to win. Oh, whoever it is that you hate, because the politics of hate is what's going on in our country right now. Hate them over there. No, hate them over there. It's that.
But what I find is funny. It's the ones that are accusing others of hate are usually the ones that are the ones doing the hating.
Yeah, it's so true. And to have a unified American electorate that votes to say, you know what, let's get someone who will draw from all of the good ideas in the whole spectrum of people and work with everyone fairly and equally.
Yep.
Because they don't have an allegiance to a party that dictates what they must do. So we've got to keep them out of office because that would make America great again.
Right.
That would actually build back better. That would make America stronger. I
love how you put the two different slogans together because that's brilliant. And you're right. It's funny. It's funny how that works, isn't it? I wonder how many people actually know what MAGA stands for.
I don't know.
I bet very few, other than people that are, yeah. And then, anyways, that was great. That was brilliant. So let's get to these last two bits because I want to get into the actual where they do they show the variables and how they're doing it.
So group attribution error would be saying a particular group is because you're a member of a particular group, you are thus and such. And that's something that they do constantly to naturopathic doctors, that to independent candidates for president, and the halo.
From a code and within the data perspective, they would be. That was what they were talking about. That's what he's referring to. They basically. Oh, this person. Oh, that's a group say, oh, well, this information is a group attribution error, but they specify certain types of information and bias the information flow and what people are getting.
Right. Right.
So they're not really making anything equal. They're biasing it against a certain group of individuals, and that can be any way they set it. It's customizable.
They don't want certain groups to
Right.
be given any credibility on their search engines.
Correct.
Other groups, it's fine. You could give all the credibility you want, but
How can people make an informed decision if they don't have access to all the information? Right.
They can't, obviously, and that's exactly why it's a what's the word? Mind fuck. It's
mind fuck. That's right. That's accurate. It really is 1984 in reality now to you folks.
Really,
like
really
we're that's what we're facing here, folks.
Yeah, and the halo effect, because you believe in Chinese medicine, you are therefore a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist.
Is that what you think they're referring to there? That makes sense. I could see that.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into data collection and annotation, sampling error, non-sampling error, insensitivity to sample size, correspondence bias, in-group bias, bias blind spot, confirmation bias, subjective validation, experimenter's bias, choice supportive bias, neglect of probability, anecdotal fallacy, illusion of validity, automation bias within the data, reporting bias, selection bias, overgeneralization bias, outgroup homogeneity bias, stereotypical bias, historical unfairness, implicit associations, implicit stereotypes. We already went through this. This is annotation.
So
that's a secondary. So that they're just going through all the different steps that in the diagram basically. So we got that.
Evaluation is where we are.
More data to estimate how likely different things are. Stereotypical bias. Okay, here's where it gets good, folks. Here's where they give an example. A man and his son are in a terrible accident and are rushed to the hospital in critical care. The doctor looks at the boy and exclaims, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. How could this be?"
Well, it's his mother.
That's the illusion. Yeah, okay. A man and his son are in a terrible accident and are rushed to the hospital in critical care. So I can't be operating this boy. He's my son. How could this be? And then it has a picture of a woman, right?
Right.
So obviously female doctor, right? That's the implication.
Right.
Now, the majority of test subjects overlook the possibility that the doctor is a she, including men, women, and self-described feminists. Okay, reporting bias. Male surgeon versus female surgeon. So male surgeon, 89,800 results. Female surgeon, 199,000. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Real world diversity among surgeons. So for male surgeons, okay.
Oh, there's your bias. This is an obvious bias in Google search results.
Yes.
Because they're giving a little less than 90,000 for male surgeon, and it's actually 81% of all the surgeons. And what was it for female? It's right down there, almost 200,000, and it's actually 19%. So this is obvious bias.
I think this is how it was before this is okay. And then how it was in their initial results. And then they watch. You're gonna love how they did this. They used that as justification, but then they reversed it and made it biased in the opposite direction. Oh my God, it's crazy how they do this. Check this out. We're learning from text. So this is based on the frequency used on, I think, online in corpus. So spoke, laughed. Spoke is 11,577 and 11,577,917 times.
Laughed.
Go ahead.
3,904,519 times. Murdered. 2,834,529 times. Inhaled. 984,613 times. Breathed. 725,34 times. Hugged 610,040 times. Blinked 390,692 times. Exhale 168,985 times.
Okay. And it has highlighted these two right here, right? So top results show historical unfairness. That's implicit associations and implicit stereotypes reflected in reporting bias. Okay, well, if you that's historically accurate to how people that put out a lot of this information may or may not see it, but you can't freaking suppress one side of information and declare it the untruth and not give that people access to both sides of the equation to make up their own minds. It doesn't make any. It doesn't work like that. You have to let people use their discernment and critical thinking skills. This is not okay. This is a totally this. Even though they try to word it as, oh, it's something good and we're trying to be fair. It's really inherently can't be fair because of the way it's designed.
Right. You're going to put somebody in charge of what people are allowed to think.
Yes.
These are thought police.
Exactly. Exactly. They're basically shaping the narrative in people's minds based on the information available.
Right.
If you suppress a certain information but only allow other information, you create a bias. That is a bias in and of itself. You can't be the gatekeeper and say that you're trying to fix bias. It doesn't work like that.
No, I'm going to fix your bias. You're going to start thinking what I think.
Exactly. That's what ends up happening. You have to be able to have open discussion, open thought without censorship for people to be able to have these discussions. And what they're doing is limiting the ability of people to have these discussions by suppressing information.
Yeah.
That is inherently wrong from any aspect when you do that. For any agenda other than there is no agenda justifiable for that, in my opinion.
What you're doing is you're taking away the ability for people to use their minds to discern.
Yes.
We're discerning for them and feeding them what you want them to believe. And of course, we want to, if we're Google, we want people entranced by the narrative that we've created. We want to use all of our suasions in a way that will convince them that what we're telling them is true, because that's the idea. You want to shape the culture after the fashion of what you intend for it to be, so that you have consumers who don't think but accept what you give them as the truth and then act as though that is the truth, whether it's true or not.
You want to go ahead and read this for our viewers?
We tend to mention and share things that are outside of our expectation of day-to-day norms, ignoring the things that go without saying.
Okay. Training data are collected and annotated. Media are filtered, ranked, aggregated, or generated, and then back into itself.
Right.
So here's an image search, for example, for image search in Google and for a professor, right?
Right.
Okay. Men versus women, men in blue and women in green. So other faculty, lecturers, assistant professors. So we're looking at just the stats on that.
Right.
Of women in higher education. So, okay, so let's see. And they're talking about the fact that there's more men in some, well, no, there's more women. Okay, wait. Professors, there's more male professors than female professors, which is what they typed in here. Professor, right?
Right.
But that's what you would expect, is for that mostly male images to come up, because there's more male professors, right? That's consistent with these numbers from what I'm saying.
Right.
Right. Okay, and that's just reality. It's realistic. If you modify that, that's not. You're basically
you can modify
propaganda.
You don't
when you're trying to fix when you're trying to fix the data to be more equitable.
Right. You can modify this, and then you will not give people a true and accurate rendering of what reality is.
Correct. Gender diversity among tenured professions: 70% male, 30% female. Okay, that's what they're pointing out there, right? Where did the women go? So they're pointing out that some women, images didn't show, and that's true. Now, but like now they talk about the confusion matrix. Yes, what? That's funny. So basically, by the end of it, people don't realize they can control this algorithm and fine tune it any way they want.
Right.
This is their justification for doing this. This is what they use in their presentation, right? But what this actually enables them to do is use their blacklist to justify suppressing any search parameters, one, right?
Right.
So let me see if we can go. We're going to go and get to blacklist here. There's a blacklist somewhere here. 1 second here. Did I do that? Hold on 1 second. Let's just go. Let me go here and open this up real quick. But go ahead. Just give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts so far on that real quick. And then we'll get. I'm going to bring up the Google blacklist stuff that I got from that.
The one of the things, the next thing that we were going to look at was the confusion matrix. I think was the heading, and one of the things that's important if you want to manipulate someone's thinking is to confuse them. You want to take whatever they think they know and gaslight them if you have to. Once upon a time, someone asked me, well, how do you control someone's mind? I said, well, the most effective way is fear, because you can cause them to go unconscious if they're afraid. They're not able to think. So then you control their mind by making them fearful, and then you keep repeating what it is you want to say, and they will accept it because they're unable to process. You've got them in a state of fear, terror, or rage works as well, but it's harder to put in programming. If someone's holding a gun to your head and they're saying, you're going to give me your wallet, you're likely to say, of course I am, here you are, and hope you spend that money happily, because you want to stay alive. You're fearful for your life. You're not going to try to engage with them on a mental level. It's very likely because you're too afraid. You can't process. You can't think. Your brain retreats to the limbic system, which is fight, flight, or freeze. And so that's the state that they try to induce in us: fight, flight, or freeze. And one of the ways that you can approach that, a confused mind makes no choice. If you can give somebody too many options, it's one of the things that you need to learn if you're doing selling. You give people 2 options, well, that might not be bad. But if you give people 7 options, then they're likely to just go away without buying a thing because they can't process that many. Confusion sets in, and a confused mindset just gives up. Says, I surrender. I'm not going to try to deal with this. I can't, because again, you've overwhelmed the processor. The processing mind has a limited capacity for holding concepts in it. So when you get too many concepts piled up, then the processor shuts down. And this is why you have to give people limited options if you're trying to give them something, if you're trying to encourage them to be able to know, like, and trust you, because, and that's when they would be interested in making a purchase from you, is if they know, like, and trust you. Then they want to support what you're doing. They want to help you because they know you, they like you, and they trust you. So if you say, hey, listen, this would be a good idea, they'll have a tendency to go, yeah, probably so, because I know you and I like you and I trust you. If you say it's a good idea, I'm at least going to come at it with an open mind.
Right.
And
so this is the blacklist, the controversial YouTube blacklist from Google.
Oh, boy.
That Zach Voorhees was talking about in that testimony, the 8-minute testimony in Texas Supreme Court, I believe.
Holy cow.
File will be parsed by superroot string lookup module. The data format is in plain text. Each line contains one query without leading, trailing duplicated white spaces. Each term is delimited by a single space. Queries in this file will force the controversial tweet alert to be triggered, meaning the blacklist trigger. It triggers the blacklist algorithm to censor all these queries if they're typed into YouTube, basically. So this is like July 3rd, 2018. That's when
man.
this is dated. So you can see like the Las Vegas shooting, a lot of stuff that they're censoring here for searches on YouTube. This is their censorship going back to 2018.
The Twiddler sounds like the Riddler, doesn't it?
I think it's the name of their censorship module, the one that they're using to censor any information. Any matches to these queries don't show that information. Basically, with what it's doing,
the Twiddler
it's basically hiding that information or preventing results from showing for these queries.
Twiddler, then, if I may, is the Google version of the Riddler to Batman. The
Correct.
Twiddler is their super villain that comes in to deceive us if we try to find the truth.
Yeah, so basically all this stuff is basically going to be censored from the YouTube algorithm, but it also applies to the search engine to some degree because like I showed earlier in that in this right here, this is a perfect example of them putting this query, assassination attempt on Trump, on the blacklist because it didn't show up in the auto results based on what you've already typed, right?
Anyone typing an assassination attempt on Trump is start with assassination attempt on TR, and it
look at this. Here's another. This is for an example from what happened in October 1st, 2017, right? So here in Vegas, they're trying to they're censoring the information from people from accessing it, and they're doing it under the guise of protecting people from dangerous misinformation. Well, who gets to decide whether it's misinformation or not? I'm sorry, who made you the authority?
Right. Yeah, mass murder caught on tape in Las Vegas.
And it's tech companies with the government to do it. I think that's why they're pushing this whole antitrust lawsuit, because I think they can get away with, oh look, we did our job, we accomplished all this. What people don't realize is they're doing all this shit on the side for behind the scenes, government and for tech companies. They're working together.
Able to see.
Oh, sons of bitches, man! Just trust people. You can't know. I'm sorry, we don't do that in this country. No one organization or entity has the right to freaking censor any other group. That's contrary to everything we believe.
It is a criminal violation of the right to free speech.
Yeah,
it really is.
It is
the criminal violation of our right to free speech, our right to gather. We're gathering online to have a discussion about things that are pertinent to us, and we're being forbidden from having that discussion or gathering online to have that discussion. So this is absolutely a violation of our right under the Constitution of the United States of America.
All right, so we're going to go into the confusion matrix now. It's back to page 34. We're almost like a quarter of the way through this. We're probably close to halfway through it soon. We're at page 34 of 96. I want to go through this because I think a lot of this is important to understand what Google's been doing.
Okay.
Evaluation metric insights, the confusion matrix, references, predictions. Evaluation metric insights, the confusion matrix. They're basically describing each step by step. Create for each subgroup and prediction pair across subgroups. So basically, they're creating two different variables, subgroup and then a prediction outcome, right? Variable. So it's a pair of variables, and then they're comparing them across subgroups, programmatically speaking, basically.
Right.
Create for each subgroup and prediction pair. Compare across subgroups. Example: women / face detection, men face detection, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the algorithm is used for the image aspect of it, I believe. Right. Metric insights, and that's the comparison they're making with this diagram, I believe. Yes, correct. Evaluation metric insights, the confusion matrix. Positive, negative, negative, positive. Evaluation metric insights. Okay, so positive, an example of a reference positive and a prediction is positive. Reference says something exists. Model predicts it. True positives. Positive reference, prediction is negative. Reference says something exists. Model doesn't predict it. False negatives. Type 2 error. Is that what they're calling false negatives? Their model, it says reference says something doesn't exist, but their model doesn't predict it. Is that what they're saying there?
The reference says something exists. Model doesn't.
What are you referring to this model that they're talking about here that they're showing? They're talking about what they're presenting here in this algorithm.
Positive prediction. Reference says something exists. Model predicts it. So that's a true positive because the model predicted that something exists and the reference says it does exist. Model doesn't predict that something exists. Reference says something does exist. That's a false.
A false negative. What they call type 2 error.
Prediction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because remember, they're putting their predictions. They're talking about the desired outcome of the search result, basically, or what information is shown and what's not.
Right.
In that context. And the reference would refer to information as it exists about that bias, basically, the bias they're trying to create.
Right. Reference says something doesn't exist. Model.
So referencing traditional data as is without any.
So that would be a false positive. Reference says something doesn't exist, but the model predicts that it does. That's a false positive.
Okay, that makes sense.
Something doesn't exist. Model doesn't predict it. That's a true negative.
Right, so those aspects make sense. I'm just like
they're training their machines, I guess.
Huh?
I guess this is how they're training their computers.
That's what it looks like. Yeah, the prediction model. Because look, they're over here in this column is the predictions. So it's basically a prediction model based on the algorithm's output is what they're trying to basically emphasize here with the confusion matrix. And the model they're talking about is their machine learning fairness model, basically.
Right.
So evaluation. Okay, so we already got this. This is just highlighted, so it's highlighting them in color now. Problem areas.
Calculate true positive rate, sensitivity recall, false negative rate, miss rate, false positive rate, fallout, true negative rate, specificity. So they're analyzing precision, positive predictive value, false discovery rate, and negative predictive value, false omission rate. That would be LR plus, LR minus. I don't know what LR is standing for.
The LR plus, LR negative. I'm not sure either.
Maybe that's a learn rate. I don't know.
Possibly, yeah. That would make sense. I don't know. We'll have to see what it. Interesting.
This spell predicts if you're coming.
So basically, we're talking about the calculation that how they're gonna divide. Oh, okay. I see what they're doing here. All right. So they're talking about how they're going to calculate this algorithm.
Right.
This is the algorithm, true positive rate, right? Which would be positive right up here, right? The reference says something exists, right? And they're adding a sensitivity variable to adjust the bias of the information perceived versus the recall variable, which is oh wow.
Right.
So recall from memory, basically, I think. So oh wow, interesting. False negative rate. So that would be over here, this column, right? True positive rate. So you can get true positive rate divided by sensitivity divided by recall. And continue down and see what they're talking about here. Evaluation metric insights. Reference says something exists, model predicts it. True positives. Reference says something doesn't exist, model predicts it. False positives.
So that's precision divided by positive predictive value gives you the false discovery rate. Yeah.
Evaluation metrics, error trade-offs. False positive, type 1 error. You're pregnant. Obviously not. Okay, so that's a false positive.
Right.
Why is it? Okay, so that's a false negative because it says you're not pregnant. Okay, so false negative. Okay, that's their example of a false negative. Error trade-offs. Real world
How
example.
dare men can't be pregnant.
Huh?
I said, how dare they imply that men can't be pregnant?
I think that's the whole point of what they ended up like. Oh my god, dude! You see where this is going, though.
Yeah.
Real world example.
You want, I need
Project
to,
working with clinicians for mental health.
I think you need to condense your picture a little bit so you can see if there's text in this picture.
I didn't see any text in the picture on the right, just this stuff here.
Okay.
They got excess page with each point they're trying to add because they like an animation. I don't know why they do it that way, but that's freaking waste of freaking space if I ask me. That's just the way they did this. But I want to go to the end one so we can here, how about this? There, it's all right there.
False
You see
positive.
better?
Prioritize true positive rate at a low false positive rate.
Error trade-offs, real-world example, project, working with clinicians for mental health, trying to detect suicide risk. For patient trust and sanity, important not to have false positives. Predicting suicide risk when there is not a risk. Prioritize true positive rate at a low false positive rate. Okay. Choose your evaluation metrics in light of acceptable trade-offs between false positives and false negatives. So false positive, right? False negative. Okay. Lantern guided model analysis. Model plus evaluation. Model evaluation plus data slicing
equals better understanding of disproportionate outcomes. Model evaluation plus data slicing equals better understanding of disproportionate outcomes. Okay.
Collaboration start. Hear about. Oh, what? Interesting that it would have education related stuff here. Interesting that it would have education related stuff right here. Can you read that okay or no?
No, it's too small for me.
Here. How about that?
Yeah, okay.
A little bit bigger. These are slices they're talking about in the previous text.
Okay, total weighted example, average label, average refined prediction, calibration, logistics something.
So they're using this as an example for their prediction model, I think.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, let me zoom this back out. Word embeddings. Okay.
Right.
Common machine learning fairness feature. Or common machine learning feature. Word embeddings. Word embeddings represent each word as a vector. A woman.
Woman, a vector.
Common machine learning feature. Word embeddings represent each word as a vector. Woman allows us to calculate similarity between words. Okay.
Woman, man, aunt, uncle, girl, boy.
Word embedding. Okay, we already did that. So okay, so here's what they're doing here. They're using a trigonometry function known as a cosine. Okay, and they're calculating you're using vectors, basically an angular vector using cosine calculation to calculate these two variables, man versus woman, in this variables in this scenario. Basically, is what in computer like code that they would probably use a function very similar to that, but that's how they're representing the equation or the algorithm, if you will.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So basically, they're taking the words man and woman, and they're vectors, and similarities between embeddings can be found using cosine distance. So they're doing a calculation that is man times woman, and they're translating it into the set of man and the set of woman.
Well, yeah, but basically they're trying to offset the what there is able to be put out using this algorithm right here, basically. So cosine I can find this function right here, I would be able to do it. It's used often in cosine. Where is cosine? Is it not even on here? It's been a minute since I used this. You know what? We're just gonna. It's basically a mathematical function in trigonometry, used to calculate angles. Basically, a vector is an angle.
Yeah, but
Okay?
I think we can keep
Is
moving.
one way to put it.
Something that
Yeah,
I've
let's
never-
do that.
It's just gonna.
Huh?
I think it'll slow us down.
Yeah, okay, go great.
To me, my understanding is they're taking the word embeddings represent each word as a vector. Similarities between embeddings can be found using cosine distance. Similarities between the difference between vectors can also be calculated using cosine distance. G equals man minus woman. R equals king minus
Correct.
queen. So
Yeah, because they can use that as a similar to calculate the difference between the two rates.
times
Basically, I do that in programming all the time, but it's a common method when using an algorithm.
right. And they're translating it into, is this, okay, when you got these two lines here with the G in the middle and the 2
Mhm.
lines on the other side, is that like a set of G or
Okay,
like,
so basically the period right here,
that's
when
a-
I was first- this means times, right? In programming code.
Yeah.
Multiplication. This is like divide, a ratio basically. Yeah, basically. So they're saying G variable G and cosine variable G with R is equivalent to G times R over G. I think the double bar means or is like an or symbol or it's I don't could not. I think it's an or. It stands for or, which is the equivalent of it has to do with Boolean logic. I'm not gonna. It's too hard to explain right now without sounding way super scientific. So
that's fine.
go ahead.
Okay, common ML, that's common machine learning feature, word embeddings. Word embeddings represent each word as a vector. Similarities between embeddings can be found using cosine distance. Similarities between the difference between vectors can also be calculated using cosine distance. This can show us roughly equivalent relationships between words. Man times woman equals king. No, man minus woman equals king minus queen, or
I think it's just demonstrating that because it has the arrows here. I don't think they necessarily literally mean minus, but they're saying that man versus in comparison to woman, it can be can be equated to the equivalent between king versus queen.
yeah, can be equated in its relationship. It's not equal to, but can be equated.
It can be equated and compared in the relationships to each other. Yeah,
so
correct.
A man's relationship to a woman can be equated to a king's relationship to a queen.
Basically, yep.
Equation.
And in the context of words and in this algorithm, basically.
Right. Common machine learning feature, word embeddings. Word embeddings represent each word as a vector. Similarities between embeddings can be found using cosine distance. Similarities between the difference between vectors can also be calculated using cosine distance. This can show us roughly equivalent relationships between words, including unfairness. Man is to woman, king is to queen. Man is to woman as computer programmer is to homemaker.
No,
that
it may be true that but like that's just one example. It doesn't necessarily. That's a potential. When you start to bias it one way or the other, you're still biasing it.
Right. They're inserting a bias to show unfairness. And,
basically.
Basically they're suggesting that a computer programmer is more or less inevitably a man, and that does suggest a bias. It may be a bias that corresponds to reality to a high degree. I don't know, but it is a bias. Yes.
Potential solution to bias: debias your embeddings. High level, calculate the representation of a concept like gender using word embeddings. It's interesting that they're even talking like, what are the odds of that? That's quite interesting because now they're reshaping reality at this point.
Subtract this representation from learned word embeddings. Use a hyperparameter to define how much this subtraction affects the embedding. Link to code.
Yeah, that's not, we can't access that. That's on Google. That shit's no longer, oh, wait, no. Oh, I wonder if we can. I wonder if we can. It's on GitHub.
Oh.
Ooh. I'm going to download the source code and look into it later.
There you go. It will mean something to you.
It will mean a lot to me because I can understand it.
You have the highest
This podcasting thing is just my side gig. I'm freaking software engineer, vigilante hacker by night. That used to be my old freaking gig. You know, I don't do gray hat no more, but those are the old days. So I have to be very careful these days. You know.
No, I understand.
Anyways, so yeah, let's see. Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad we were able to access that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Embeddings with TensorFlow. Embeddings reveal words used in similar contexts within your data set. Collaboration start. Okay, so they're talking about the adjustment. Interesting. Is that on GitHub? I don't know. Anyways, let's we're already at page 66.
Mm-hmm.
So this is basically telling us about the word, you know, the variable versus the norm. I think that's an embedded words. So let's go back down here to Betty's demo. Fairness relevant tool, Google internal. And let's see if we can go a little bit bigger. Go mix. Suite of tools useful for different aspects of fairness bias. Some key tools also listed below. And these are like a lot of the tools that the developers on this project would probably use to implement it. Basically, it's this Google's internal developer system. Basically, I believe. If we try to go to it, we have to log in, and it's not. No, we'll see. Oh, interesting. I must have took that shit down then. Oh wow. Oh, that was a while ago too. Anyway, so we got different tools that they would use. List of tools to help visualize different aspects of your model, yada yada yada. So basically, they could use a bunch of these different metrics and tools. I think those are not even public.
Products.
I think these are projects like or tools for Google developers. I don't think the public has access to this initially. I think it's an internal server program that they have running. This link is from an internal document, so that's why I'm thinking.
Google internal, view by different streams of text balance, dimensional space, view word relationships in embedding space.
See if this comes up.
Experiments.
Oh, see, here's an example. See, this is the developer dashboard right here. So basically, this is where developer freaking people that work for Google would sign in at, basically.
Right.
To get access to these filings and these things, because there's a lot of this is on Google.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's on Google. Anyway, so we got a few different. Yeah, Google internal. See, we don't have access to that.
Right.
These are all Google internal tools for the staff building this thing. All right, so there's that. We're going to go into additional slides. Karate Kid example. Single task, logistic regression, output prediction task, true or false, for example. Single task, deep learning. Output prediction task, true or false, for example. Fancier, and this is the image vector association that they use in word embeddings. So that's word 1, word 0, right? So you have input, then you have your output.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple tasks with basic logistic regression. They're talking about parallel processing here, basically, but in a way that would shape the ability of it to do its task. See, task one, see, that's what they're talking about here. So multiple tasks, deep learning plus multitask learning example. And remember, they're talking about they're using AI in some of this too. So
Mhm. Neurotypicality, anxiety, depression, suicide attack, eating disorder, schizophrenia, panic disorder, PTSD, bipolar disorder. 5% positive example, less than 5% positive examples. Okay.
multitask learning for mental health conditions with limited social media data. Okay, interesting. And I think that this is like their justification is, oh look, we're going to try and help save people's lives because we care about suicide risk and this and that. But
Right.
it could be used for another, other purposes too, not necessarily for this. It could be biased either way. You know,
Right.
that's the whole trouble with this kind of censorship.
Well, also the programmers.
Exactly, it's going to have their inherent bias in it by default either way.
Right. And if Google has a policy that says don't show bias towards anyone, no matter who they are or what they're up to, then that is a bias.
It is. It is. It is in and of itself a bias.
And that will mean that they're unable to act in accordance with any kind of religious bias, cultural bias, sexual preference bias, all of those things, however, because an individual is incapable of seeing their own bias is still going to enter in. It's just going to be the biases that line up with what is okay for Google, and the ones that don't line up with that will be the ones that get thrown out. So if it's okay in Google's eyes to have this bias, it's going to make it into the algorithm. If it's not okay to have that bias, it'll be thrown out. And that means they're still manipulating the minds of the users to correspond with a chosen.
Wonder what's the acronym for this diagram? What did you see that I got highlighted? What that says? It says input image W banana yellow and then output to CNN. I don't know what the heck that means. If that's referring to a notification or acronym for something else, but I don't see nothing up here talking about that acronym other than YouTube, Flickr, Facebook, and other. Interesting. Anyways, either way, it's neither here nor there. Classifier linear sigmoid for each W variable, and then output banana is yellow, some ground truth check mark. Interesting. So gold standard annotation human bias label prediction model. It's basically a variable prediction model for factoring in reporting bias. Idea: a human-based bias prediction H can be factored into two terms. Visual presence V is the concept visually present. Factoring in reporting bias. Idea: a human bias prediction H can be factored into two terms: visual presence and relevance. Is the concept relevant for a human? Okay, that's R. Factoring in reporting bias. Idea: a human bias prediction H can be factored into two terms: visual presence, relevance. Okay, so there's your visual presence relevance. Okay, and then we got factoring in reporting bias. Let's see. Trying to see where the other ones come into play here. So human bias prediction H, that's right there. And so I wonder what F stands for here. Does it say anywhere here? Do you see it?
Oh.
Hold on. Probably Oh, probably factor.
Hmm.
Probably stands for factor in
Yeah.
this equation, I would imagine. Factoring or factor, right?
Right.
So you can calculate H. Your human bias prediction can be factored. So H equals factor, factoring in relevance and presence, visual presence. Okay,
Right.
that makes more sense. These are actually mathematical variables, folks. So I mean, if you don't understand what these are like really advanced. So I don't think most people will understand most of them.
Language that I have not learned.
Correct, correct. But these are basically mathematical equations, or basically it's algebra, basically, folks, and math. But these are what you would use when you're writing an algorithm and you want to implement it in code. This would be your first rundown of how the actual equations in written form, and then you would implement it in actual code, basically. See, these curly brackets, that's commonly used in computer programming for opening and closing statements in multiple different languages. End-to-end approach, visual presence estimator. So ConversionNet FC7 is basically a visual representation of their desired how their system would work with the different variables and aspects to it. So relevant visual presence classifier, visual presence predictions, relevance classifier, conditional estimates, human-centric predictions over here, and they have it go down in marginalized compute loss by Y. See yellow bananas and bananas, say bananas. Okay, so noise estimator, basically they're what they call their noise, their bias is what I guess we would call that, right?
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Anyway, so that's it on that one.
Wow.
Interesting. Got a lot going there, but yeah, there's a lot to cover here. There's more, but we've already been on like for 3 hours, so I think we should wrap it up.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. This is current news around the most important stories you'll probably hear over the next week that I think are important that everybody has a right to know about. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. Till next time. I haven't been podcasting for a minute, you guys. But it's obviously I've been I've been doing many lives, so I just wanted to let my audience know I'm kind of getting back into it right now. I've just been dealing with family related stuff, taking care of my mom, and trying to get her situation taken care of. Obviously, families.
Remember,
important.
if you hear it on the mainstream media news, it's probably only about a 30% chance that that's actually true.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. That's accurate enough. You're going to get bits pieces, but you're going to definitely get a complete smear bias or complete spin, one way or the other. That's the one common theme I see here across the board when it comes to the legacy media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely going to be bias, and if you don't see it on the mainstream media, then go to RFK Jr. for president.
.com?
Something like that. I don't really know. I'm making that up, but you're not going to see him on the mainstream media because he's a corporate lackey and everyone else is. So you'll see plenty from the corporate lackeys, the ones that can be manipulated by the giant corporations. You'll hear from and see, and the ones that are actually a threat to the dominance of the mega corporations, to the mega corporations controlling you and our country and the economic system. You'll hear from those that are dominant in those things. But a person that stands up to them and actually costs them money, like Robert Kennedy, who has done it for Monsanto, done it for Standard Oil, done it for I don't know. I'm not up on all of that, but I'm telling you, he's been fighting for clean water and clean medicine for a good 40 years. I met him maybe 40 years ago when he was founding River Keepers, and he was trying to rescue some of the rivers in this nation. And the Hudson River Project is one that was, I mean, the Hudson River caught fire The Hudson River was a dead body of water, and now it is one of the best fishing spots in the world. And that is largely the efforts of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You need to learn about this man by going and seeking it out. And Google's probably not going to make it easy for you. So you want to use alternative search engines like
Brave's a good one.
um,
DuckDuckGo is another one. I don't know how reliable that one is anymore. I hear that they've been compromised as well, but I'm not sure on that one.
that too.
I haven't used them either in a while.
And most of the search engines use Google results quite extensively.
Yeah, that's the sad part.
Some digging, but you need to know the truth. You could go on X and you search for what's the truth about Robert F. Kennedy, and you're likely to find some good information, because it seems to me Elon's doing a pretty good job of not censoring the truth on X since he took it over.
I think so too. I mean, he's been calling out the censorship in a lot of ways, and Twitter seems to be where the war is at these days.
Yeah, it does.
Or X, I mean. Formerly Twitter, aka X.
Go to x.com. Some inquiries about RFK.
I still call it Twitter, okay? I never really got into it until shortly before freaking he took over.
Who is saying we need to minimize the military-industrial complex. We need to get out of a lot of the countries that we're in. We don't need a standing military presence in all the countries that we're in.
Like, why are we out there and bobbling ourselves and all the, starting all these goddamn freaking wars for money and profit?
It's
ridiculous.
For arms manufacturers.
Yes,
that's
exactly.
Really the reason. It's good for the arms manufacturers. It's good for BlackRock, who is controlling the economy and controlling the food supply and controlling the.
They are.
Arms
Oh my God! Did you hear about the Trump assassination attempt shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks? Did you hear about the BlackRock commercial he was in?
Yeah, there's a BlackRock.
Unfucking believable. Unfucking believable.
It's astounding.
I mean, the lack of freaking security by the Secret Service that day was just unacceptable in every single way. And then, oh man, what pissed me off is when freaking when freaking Director Ray, I shouldn't even call him that, Christopher Ray, because he tried to insinuate that it was a glass shard that hit his ear. Huh. After we had already well-known fact that he got shot through the ear. Like, come on. If a person died, 2 people got injured. Besides the president.
And
the former president, I mean.
Killed conveniently, so he's not going to be testifying about anything.
Right. Too many inconsistencies with it.
And the people who were overlooking that window, who were the security people, the only 2, there were supposed to be 3, but there were only 2, and one of them got locked out, and the other one went to find him. So there was nobody looking on that roof. How fucking absurd does it have to be before the American people go, wait a minute, there's a huge stinking pile of horse shit here that we need to examine and understand that
100%.
There is a fabric of lies that is deep and thick.
That
is being woven around us.
It is.
So that we don't see whatever the truth is.
And people need to understand it's not one party or the other. It's party. It's what we call the uniparty, the globalist, extreme aspects that have allegiance to special interests on the left, and extreme aspects that have special allegiance to a special interest on the right, that are all coming together. And for the illusion that we've had free choice all these years, and there's 2 people standing up to that right now that I see. I see Trump and RFK Jr.
Yeah. I quite understand that your mic is not picking you up as well.
How about now?
That's better.
All right. I said what we call the uniparty or the globalists is extreme parts on the left that have allegiances to special interests, and extreme parts on the right that have allegiances to special interests as well.
Right.
That's what has been controlling everything since before, at least since Bush won. At least since Bush won. At least since Bush won.
Elite?
I said at least since Bush won.
At least what plus 1?
I said at least since Bush won. Since President Bush won. Number one, the senior.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh, since at least that time?
Since yes, after Reagan's administration, correct.
Yeah. 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 It's been a circus for a long time.
Possibly a lot longer than that even.
And it's a kabuki theater, folks. You are not getting anything like reality. Nothing corresponding to reality. And that's why they can't put RFK on the stage with these guys, because he'll just expose the truth, and it's game over once the American people really get the picture that he
100%.
will kill them if they ever hear his voice, which means go and hear his voice. Seek it out until you listen to what he's got to say for a good half hour anyway. I'd say 2.5 hours if you want to get any kind of depth of understanding. And if at that point you don't see that it's really the only rational choice, well, okay, that's fine. But at least you used your mind. At least you processed the information for yourself. It wasn't just the talking heads on television saying, this is what you must think.
Right.
This man is insane. This man has a brain worm. This man eats dogs. Because all this horse shit that they're going to feed you is designed to create a bias, to create a prejudice, so that they can maintain power where it is now.
Correct. It's funny. I see that I would like to try to paint Bush as this globalist elite. Oh no, Trump as this globalist elite. Like they try to paint him like that, but it's really not, dude. I mean, he didn't need anything. He didn't need to run for president. I think he gave up his paycheck while he was in office. He didn't take any of those checks. Right. So if he's really the dictator that everybody's claiming he is, then how come he didn't and anyway, sign the Insurrection Act after J6? Why did he walk away? That's what I want to know. Because he wasn't. He did not instigate an insurrection.
No, he didn't.
At all. And in fact, back that up.
No, he didn't.
But they're counting on people not looking.
Right. They're counting on people believing what you are told. You will believe what we tell you because we are the media, and we never lie. What? Really?
When you have them telling you stuff like that, you need to start questioning it.
It's the hypnotic power of 300 television and radio stations all following the same script.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you talk to your neighbor, they say, did you see this story? It turns out that blah, blah, blah. Yes, I saw that story. It turns out that blah, blah, blah. And you're both repeating the same thing because it has been put into your ears no matter what.
It's called mass formation, I believe.
It's called what?
Mass formation.
Mass formation, yeah. Yeah, mass formation psychosis.
Exactly.
Is actually the full term.
That's right. I knew I was missing one word.
Formation psychosis. They've created a false reality and then shoved it into your head until you believe it. And that's what has happened to you repeatedly, over and over. You're living in a hypnotic trance. You're living in a dream that has been fashioned for you by the billionaires that run the world and the global elite and the World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization and Klaus Schwab and his cronies. And you're buying it if you don't get outside of the matrix and start digging for yourself to find the truth.
Oh, I want to mention another sub-organization, I believe, that's involved in some of the local corruption here on the school, with the Las Vegas Global Economic Alliance and the Council of Great City Schools and other organizations.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it.
So, anyways, we've had a great show. We're coming up on 3 hours, so we should wrap it up. It's almost 2 a.m. here. I'm sure it's 3 a.m., close to 3 a.m. there.
Yeah, it's 2:40 a.m. So,
all right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. So I'm going to be, I'll kind of ease back into the podcasting again, but we're going to be doing more and more as time progresses. There's a lot I need to catch up on covering and a lot of stuff I want to put together and start doing again. I just had to take a step back from things to take care of my family and make sure my mom had everything that she needed. And, I've been going through the ringer dealing with the freaking medical system in the state. It's been insane. trying to get my mother proper care to consistent physical therapy to get her walking again. And every time she gets close, there's a complication or a UTI or something. She goes to the hospital, then she loses her home health. And has to start all over again with the new home health. Get familiar with all new people. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. How is she supposed to recover without consistency?
Our
Man,
medical system is badly, badly broken. God bless your mom. I'll remember her in my prayers, and
appreciate that.
all of you should as well. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you tuning in. If you're watching this online, we had fun. Hope you did too.
Yep, absolutely.
Brought to your attention some things that actually you follow up on, and it makes a difference for you, because that's really what matters, is that we all make a difference that will carry forward into the future, because that's the real effect that we have. The energy that we put into our life creates waves throughout all of society, and if we're able to make a positive impact, then we leave a better world for those that come after.
Yep, absolutely, 100%.
Good night, Stephen.
Good night, Robin. Thanks for joining me. Good night, everyone. Thank you for watching. Until next time. Please share this out if you liked it on X, Twitter, YouTube, Telegram, Facebook, wherever you're watching. Much appreciated. Thank you. And don't forget to leave a comment, viewers. Love it. Appreciate you.